Sure.
Thank you.
We are live.
Good evening. This is a special meeting tonight of the Finance Committee. We're going to be discussing the budget, and today is April 25th, 2024. And first, we'll start with roll call to my left.
Tracy Osecki, School Board.
Matt Frederickson, IT Director.
Ann Horner, School Board.
Tony Rapp, Director of Business Administration.
Andy Sanko, Superintendent.
Michael Roosevelt, School Board.
Joe Hidalgo, School Board.
Bob Hickey, School Board. Ed Tate, School Board.
Nicole Khan, School Board.
Get the bodies, people.
So, Linda Stone. School Board. Did you want to make a statement first this evening regarding public comment?
Yes. To start off with, I want to give a reminder that for the most accurate and reliable information concerning our district, please refer to resources, websites, and social media platforms managed by the Council Rock School District. We advise the community to exercise caution when relying on the accuracy of social media and ask the community to verify any social media content with the district for accuracy. If you question what you are seeing, need a fact check or additional details on a matter, please reach out to the district directly. Our contact information is readily available on our website at www.crsd.org.
Thank you. And now, so ask Anthony Rapp if he would take over the meeting.
Okay. So the Finance Committee for special meeting for April 25th, the agenda what we're going to talk about is the 24-25 CREF Innovative Learning Grants, a review of the 24-25 preliminary budget, which includes major expenditure increases, additional positions, revenue increase, and then we'll talk about where we're going from here, an additional special finance meeting, a public budget forum, finance meeting on May 9th, and approval of preliminary final budget on May 16th, 2024. Before we get into any further in the agenda, I do want to mention the fact that we discussed earlier in the year my desire to be ahead of the game as far as the budget goes this year. We have not been able to meet the expectations that I had, and we've had some delays from where we were. I think we've had, the administration has had a significant amount of work that we did not expect to be done earlier this year, and that has put us behind where we needed to be for the budget. I'm not just stating that, we've had additional tasks given to us by the board that put us behind where we wanted to be. So I do apologize for that, but that is why we're not further ahead than I would like. So the first item related to next year is the 24-25 CREF Innovative Learning Grants. Providing information on this, that there are 9 grants. The total of all the grants together is $100,000. Funds to be sent to the district in July of 24, so it's related to next year. Budgeting for next year. And since this amount exceeds the $5,000 threshold for administration acceptance of a grant, we're asking the board to approve this at the May 16th general board meeting, at the May 16th, 2024 general board meeting.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Rapp. I asked that this be added on the agenda tonight for one reason, which is that the CREF team would like to get a head start on notifying the teachers who are the recipients of these grants, the thing they call the prize patrol, where they go around and surprise the teacher with a large check, the drill. And didn't really want to wait until May 17 because that doesn't allow for 9 school visits by the end of the year to be scheduled and executed. So I was hoping that the board would indicate its willingness to approve the craft grant at the May 16 meeting so that they could get started with notifying the teachers.
Thank you. And- Are we going?
Okay, let's move on.
Yes, Mike?
I have a couple of questions for you, Linda. I feel a little blindsided. We've got an agenda that has one item, but yet we're looking at the screen that shows multiple items. I'm concerned, and I don't also remember seeing any sort of slides that were provided in advance for the board to prepare around. I'm also concerned that, similar to what Mr. Rapp was talking about in the beginning of this meeting, this is normally something that we start talking about budget at least a month in advance or more so. I think last year we started this a little bit early, but that was probably the hardest learning curve with Mr. Rapp coming in. This year it feels like we're doing it late, and I would just want to understand, is that, did you have a previous conversation with Mr. Rapp to discuss the agenda items, or did that not occur?
No, we did not previously discuss any agenda items. Mr. Rapp was going to present them today. It's a special meeting, so it was not my understanding is the agenda, there is not usually an agenda sent out in advance for a special meeting.
And so, once again, there's no slides that were presented in advance.
And I didn't see any slides either.
And we only have on board docs one item which is reflective in this physical document that we have.
Did you,
Yeah.
Ed, did you want to say something?
Yeah, the slides were sent Tuesday by Dr. Senko.
No, the agenda was sent out in advance, and this was the agenda. I mean, I got this.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it's not detailed.
this is one, and that's like 4 or 5 items.
But
No, this was a special email from Dr. Senko sent on Tuesday.
You mean yesterday, or 2 days ago? Sorry.
Pardon me?
Yeah, I'm just getting a chance to, gotcha.
With
I got
details on each one of the grants. I will point out to the board that the grant process for the innovation grants involves teacher applications that are reviewed by a CREF committee by, correct me if I'm wrong, please, Dr. Sanko or Ms. Crawford or Mr. Funk, building principals. I believe Mr. Funk and Ms. Crawford as appropriate, and by our curriculum director. So it's a pretty thorough process that reviews and then selects these grants. It's not necessary for the board to review each grant proposal or award. It's simply a requirement that the board review and approve a donation. This is a donation of $47,000 from our foundation. And the information was sent to the board on Tuesday, and I really didn't anticipate any difficulty.
Well,
I don't think Mike was referring just to the CREF grants. You were talking about to the whole meeting.
correct,
Right.
correct.
He wasn't referring to the CREF.
Yeah. I just want to say, I'm thankful for the partnership. This is getting off on the wrong step here. We just did the pianos, the Steinways. They called me the piano man when I came in because of the first, some, worried about paying full price for these Steinways and going with Boston's. It was kind of a funny thing between me and a couple of people. So I was happy to see, and it's on the social media, that the partnership that I think was fostered mainly by Dr. Senko with the idea of doing the Steinways is really proven to be a big win for us in many, many ways, especially for someone who loves music. So I have no problem. I mean, if there's something about this jumping on the schedule and it not being communicated, or it's a short period of time, the bottom line is all I want to do is take a look real quick. one of the things I'm concerned, that I've heard in the past is it educational from other board members? I don't see anything that jumps out at me, it's educational. And then that, a lot of times I've seen things lean one side of the district or not, and that didn't happen this time around either. So I'm just gonna turn around and just, try to change it and say, this is wonderful that we have this money being spent. The grant, it might be a little higher than usual. I mean, we could ask some questions, but I think we'll have those for the regular meeting. But I don't anticipate anybody's gonna say no.
Could I
But I
just-
think there were some logistics that Mike was
Yeah,
worried
could I
about.
just finish articulating my point? The problem is Act 65 Sunshine Law has the intent to publish the agenda on board docs. So whether the board received an email or not, the point is that we are required to inform the public of what our meetings are supposed to include. So putting things on board docs, having the board doc agenda, the published required 24 hours advance notice agenda items of what this board is going to discuss is inconsistent with what we are currently discussing.
Well,
The
it's
point is to inform.
one agenda item, it's the budget discussion, and that's what
But-
Anthony would like to move forward with. Do you want to cancel the meeting?
No,
Can we move forward?
I'm trying to understand for both compliance of this school board as well as the public edification, how we have this disparity. So as the chair and as anybody that has advance notice, I'm trying to get a little bit more understanding of what we're covering.
Well, as we usually don't provide detailed presentations on our agendas, we don't always have all of the finance details presented previous to a meeting.
My experience in the past 2 years, at least,
It's one,
is we've had that. So I
well,
don't know what your experience you're referring to, but.
I only can tell you, did you want to say something?
I just want to bring up the point that as far as getting the slides, and this is the same way that it worked last year, is we're working on the budget pretty much right up until this meeting. So getting, and it's how it worked last year, getting the slides is not something that we're able to do prior to the meeting, getting you the slides, I should say. Also, we did have, for these budget meetings last year, we did have one agenda item budget that were listed as budget discussion. If I did not add anything about the CREF grants to that physical agenda, as I considered that to be part of next year's budget process, that's funds that we're getting to be spent for next year. So that's why I didn't add an agenda item for that. If that was something that I should have done, I apologize. But that's why that wasn't added to the board docs agenda.
Yeah, you explained it now, like, my concern was, even though the CREF grants are wonderful and all that other stuff, we're gonna vote on it next month anyway, what's the difference, and I didn't really realize it had anything to do with the budget, so why are we adding it in there? Like, we should, the public, even though we're talking about good things, the public deserves to have an agenda that they know that we're gonna talk about good, well, that person, I didn't know it had, if it has to do with the budget, it has to do with the budget, I get it.
At the regular finance committee meeting, we should discuss it again, but I think the point was to get some awareness of where the board stood on these. We can discuss them in more Monday.
Yeah, Monday.
Monday?
Don't we have a finance Monday?
No, finance is,
It's been my facilities, okay.
facilities is
Whatever.
second Tuesday.
All right. Yoda, did you want to?
Yeah, so we normally get the slides beforehand, and I was checking my email to see if we received any slides. Doesn't mean that the public gets the same slides that we get before the meeting. And I didn't see anything, and I realized that, as Tony said, he's probably working until the last minute. This is a special budget meeting to get us up to speed with what he has done so far. And I did not bring this up because my understanding was that, guy is working until the last hour, and he's not required to do that on a special meeting, but I am very grateful that Tony and his department have put all this work. And I know it's not as early as we would like it to be, but there are very good reasons behind that. So let's dig in and, see what we have, if there are no more.
Yeah, let's dig into the budget.
Can we, okay, go ahead, Tony.
First item on the budget, just to talk about the details of this budget. The budget includes a school resource officer in each middle school. Each school resource officer will cost the district $105,997. We're maintaining the same rates for health insurance in 24-25. I've looked at our fund balance in our healthcare fund. It is actually probably going to be higher at the end of this year than it was at the end of last year. I am actually waiting for the rates from our consultant to finish that up, but they will not be higher. They might even end up being a little bit lower, but I can't wait on that for much longer. It does convert all of our technology integration specialists into regular positions. Prior to this, all of those technology integration specialists were paid for with ESSER money, which was fully used in 23-24, so we have no more ESSER money. But those positions have become such a vital part of the district that we would like to keep them in the budget as a regular position, and continue with those positions. As I've talked about before, we do conservative budgeting here. So when I look at state funding, I don't base it on the governor's budget or anything that anybody's talking about. There's some things in there about another increase in basic education funding, which is actually for us is predicted to be the lowest increase that we've had since 2020. And they talk about some differences in cyber charter schools that might reduce our costs in that. I'm not including that in the budget because I don't know when that will be passed and what will be included. We did add back in this year a reserve of $500,000, and that is for non-budgeted items that come up during the year, so we have some extra leeway to pay for those kinds of items. It also includes an amount of $72,180 for a grant that we have from the state for English language learners. So that is part of this budget, and we have a grant to help pay for those costs. And we've kind of changed a little bit of our focus this year in that when we had district-wide initiatives, we expected the schools to pay for them out of their building budgets, which kind of had costs that they would normally get that they made them have to be a little bit more frugal. We've moved those costs into the central office budget. So anything for elementary schools comes from Nicole does the budgeting for that, and anything in the secondary school, obviously Al does the budgeting for that, or Al's people in that budgeting. So those are the major spots or major points of the budget as it exists right now.
And we'll be getting all of these slides then
Yeah.
from you after the meeting. Thanks. Yes, Nikki.
Quick question on the last bullet. The process of funding the district-wide initiatives through the central office budget. Is it just a process, or the actual budget itself is coming from the central office versus the district budget, the building budget?
The buildings are not, the buildings were responsible for say they had to buy new workbooks.
Okay.
For a district-wide book, that they would have to then put that in their building budget. We've changed the philosophy on that and have moved towards centrally budgeting that, so that it doesn't, because, the buildings have very limited budgets. It's based on, their budgets are based on student, and predicted enrollment, and there's a total of that budget, and we apportion it out to the schools. We just think that it's a better process to not make the schools rely on budgeting for those items.
Yes, Bob?
Thank you.
Third bullet point. What is that number? convert technology integration specialists to regular positions, how many integration specialists?
Four. Well, there's actually six. Two had already been converted to regular positions.
Good.
So the four that are left are being converted into regular positions. So it's only six for, technology in the class, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's technology in the classrooms, helping the teachers, use technology properly and also helping the students with that, so.
Oh, no.
Just to clarify, when you said, I'm sorry.
Joe, just,
So when you say convert to regular positions, just so we know, these were positions created through grant, and the grant's up, so now when we say regular position, we're just funding them.
We're funding them through
But they're already, okay.
our regular.
But this is one of those things where you're funded and then you have to pay for it.
I guess that the better term would be local fund.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. Just want to clarify it.
okay.
Next slide. This is the 24-25 budget prior to increases in employee salary based on the contracts, custodial and transportation contracts. Right now, we're expecting revenue of $271,474,623, salary and benefits cost of $196,528,245, other expenditures $75,941,748. Those are equipment and services and supplies. And that leaves us with a deficit of $995,370. So that's prior to adding in the cost of the raises and increases in our two biggest contracts. In the next slide, it's 24-25. This is the budget after increases in employee salary, custodial, and transportation contracts. Revenues have increased by $1,183,837. I know you're probably asking, why adding in cost increases revenues? But the fact of the matter is we have 50%, around 50% of our amounts that we pay in the Social Security and retirement for our employees are reimbursed by the state. So because there's larger salaries, we have a larger reimbursement, which causes that revenue to increase. Salary and benefits increased by $1,957,568, and the contractual increases were $888,020. So that leaves us with a deficit of $2,657,129.
Yes, Yuna.
So, can you remind us, please, what 1% increase means in terms of dollars?
In terms of, what?
1% increase in like if we increase the taxes for 1%, what would that mean for?
Like 1 million?
Gave us the number.
1,767,000 is a 1%. I think it's 767, I'm not sure. It's 1,700,000 and something.
So 1.7.
Yeah. I can show that later on.
And are there missing items, a lot of missing items here?
This is the budget carry forward from last year with any position from last year that we still need to have in the budget. And I say still need to have, I'm not talking about that we're talking about cutting things. I'm going to be very careful to state that there are positions that we have to add based on sabbaticals and leaves. And so, some long-term sub positions, we have to determine that at this point for next year. So some of those positions go away, sometimes we get more, we have retirement, so based on that, based on all those factors, this is our budget as it stands with the positions that we had last year that we need to have next year. The positions that we have this year that we need to have next year. I'm sorry, I get all mixed up on time.
But new positions are not here.
The new positions are next. Can I move on? Yes. Okay.
Yes, please.
So we want to talk about, so we're asking for some additional budgeted employees. The first item is a supervisor of curriculum and instruction in special education. This would be the counterpart to the supervisor of curriculum instruction in general education. This is, the district wants to be responsive to community concerns in special education. I think adding this position is us being responsive, and it allows us to have, to be able to be more responsive to community concerns. The purpose of the position would be to lead special education interventions and facilitate modifications to make the general education curriculum more accessible to students. So one of our mandates in special education is to accommodate, have our special education students involved in that as much as possible. And this helps us to do that, helps us to, continue to develop these modifications for this position. Next item, I think, if, I don't know, do you want to pause for questions after each position, or?
How about we go through each position so we stay focused on each one?
So,
So if you have any questions right now about this position, special ed? Yes, Tracy.
Not a question, but a comment. I'm thrilled to see this. I think this is really thinking smart, and I think that hopefully this will really allow everybody to, the administration, to really make a deeper impact on our special education students. So I'm thrilled to see that.
Ms. Yoder?
So at the special meeting that was last week, Dr. Casey came, and we had like 150 people attending the special ed presentation. It became very clear that there's definitely more work to be done, especially with curriculum instruction. And I think having a position like that is something that I wish we had done in the past. I think it's absolutely necessary. I was in one of the breakout sessions, and parents were asking specifically questions about that. And we were not able to really answer because we don't have an expert on all these different special education ways of teaching. And I think there were some people there from the district that were able to answer some questions, but nothing as thorough as Tammy did for the general education. So it was very clear that we need a person like that.
So, and in terms of organization, is this individual and reporting to?
this person would, this would be an Act 93 employee that would be reporting most likely to Anthony Devlin. So
Okay.
I think they shouldn't do.
I'm also interested in this one. I agree. I think that this is nice to see this district investing some money into special education. And it's nice to hear what the accountability and the reports are that where this person fits into the machine that is Council Rock. I'd like to understand a little bit more about this person's role and responsibilities, and what sort of confidence do we have as a district as a whole that one person is sufficient to fill this gap? And I don't know who that's best.
I think we'll let Mr. Devlin start that answer.
I think it's a great question. I think that we need to start with at least one right now. We do a good job with all of our students, and this is a need that I've seen now since I've come here, that we need to really strengthen our general education curriculum with the special education students in mind. to ensure meaningful engagement and participation, not only with the general education, but with some of our special education interventions. We need to make sure that we have a lot of tools in our toolbox for our teachers so they can individualize for our students as they come up from K through graduation.
Is this effectively then a response to be the term of inclusive education between special education and regular education? Is that what this curriculum coordinator is balancing?
Yes, but more. So we used to think of special education as a separate silo. So we have the general education curriculum and the special education curriculum. There's one curriculum and every child's entitled to it. So we're kind of combining what we're doing to ensure in the general education that our special education students have meaningful access. But don't forget, sometimes we pull out our special education students, provide them interventions. I want to be sure that those interventions are peer-reviewed and offered with efficacy. And I need more support. One may say, well, why can't you have a special education supervisor to look at that? But a lot of times we're looking at compliance. So I need somebody who could really look at the curriculum, look at the teaching and learning and the professional development for our teachers so we can ensure that our special education students are getting a great education.
And is that in response to the special education population increasing over the past year or some period of time?
It is in response to what I've seen and what I've heard in the community.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Bob, sorry.
Yeah, I really like the idea based on what I've been seeing and hearing. Now, the biggest part of it that I see and have seen, are they gonna be acting as a liaison as well between you and like those parents that have questions or whatnot, like, or are they strictly gonna be working, or you don't have that defined?
I don't have a plan, but I can just share with you, I would not, I would rather speak with the families myself if I need them to be at the table with me. I want to talk to the families, that's all I need to know what needs to be done. So I wouldn't want to abdicate that responsibility.
But by having this position, then it will allow you then to be able to have a greater interaction with families
Yes,
on a higher level as to where, as to where we go.
yes.
Okay, great.
Anyone else? That we can move ahead?
Before I keep going on with the positions, I do want to say that it's important to consider that these are budgeted positions. So these are positions that we're asking for to become permanent and be paid for with local sources that will, with new money coming in every year. And we've really tried to keep the focuses on, as much as we can, on kids. So the next item will be 2 ELD specialists, English language learning. The number of students has increased and seems like it will continue to increase. And this will make us better able to meet the needs of these students. Right now, we have 409 students, and I believe there's over 30 languages that are involved. So we would like to add 2 specialists. There's a lot of need for this at the secondary level, and that we would like to, have more staff available to meet these students' needs. This is something that we've, and we did receive a grant to help pay for the cost of help us meet the needs of these students, but we'd like to see some more, try to be more effective in our, I think we're very effective, but I'd like to be more effective. I think we'd like to be more effective in our learning.
Nicole, can you expand on that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So last year, we were very grateful that the board was so supportive of providing additional staff for the ELD department. It was certainly necessary. We shared the surge of registrations that we had, particularly from Ukraine and in that area of the world. And so at the time, we had received 4 positions temporarily, 2 specialists and 2 instructional assistants. At this time last year, we came before you and had asked for 2 permanent ELD specialists, which has been such a big impact to our department, to our students. But Shannon Hubeck, the coordinator, and myself We wanted to wait before asking for additional staffing just to see how this year was going. And really, we continue to grow in our numbers. We continue to have needs that, particularly at the high school level and 2 elementary schools, where we definitely need some additional instructional support for these students. So this is actually the need that is continuing from last year, but again, we, in an effort to be fiscally responsible and really make sure that we were looking closely at staffing this year and needs, we waited to ask for additional staffing, but that's why I'm before you today, we're before you today. This is certainly needed, and we continue to see a great level of need with our ELD population. So I'm happy to expand if you have additional questions, but we have an outstanding team, but it is still, in our opinion, a very thin amount of support compared to what we feel 2 additional staff could impact.
Did you have
Ms.
something to
Crawford
say?
just answered my question about last year, so
There
I
you
don't want to
have it.
slow us down.
Okay, then,
Thank you.
move on.
The next position is a STEAM teacher. That program has been implemented. It's been successful. Another teacher would allow us, the program, to reach more students and be integrated into other areas of instruction. So, we have a successful program going on. This is one of those areas where we need to look at, expanding that program.
Andrea, can you expand on that?
Sure. So as it is right now, when our STEAM program was rolled out, we took a very bare bones approach to it, just to see if it would be, if it was a success. And beyond our wildest dreams, it really has been. And one of the good parts about having so few STEAM specialists is that they were able to really pull together and start to create and build a really healthy, viable, dynamic curriculum that will change and grow through time. You have to remember that as a child goes from 1st grade to 2nd grade, 2nd grade to 3rd grade, if they start seeing the same content, kind of loses its magic. So their ability to rotate things through and find and adapt, it's really been very beneficial. On the downside, there are enough to go around. So every child, elementary school, child grade 1 through 6 is receiving STEAM, but that's it. There is no push in to the general ed classroom where an extended lesson can be had in the classroom with teachers. Teachers have asked, can you come in and show, but there's just not enough bodies to go around. And if you remember when STEAM was at this, or I think it was an education committee meeting, and you said, if you could have anything, what would you want? That was our wish, is to get more bodies in that program. And also, if you look at other specials and how they are staffed, ours is the lowest. I mean, for what we're getting out of the amount of people that we have, it's really done a very nice job. Should be very proud of that decision.
So you're saying there's one STEAM teacher
Will help.
at each right now? What's the
We have
staffing?
7 STEAM teachers. We have 10 elementary schools. They all travel. This will not put one at each school. They'll still travel, but what it will do is give them an added prep time or an added half hour to the day where they can go into a classroom, maybe visit a kindergarten classroom. So this does not address full day kindergarten either. It will not cover that.
Okay. Did you have, Tracy?
No, she answered it, thank you.
That was my question. I want to know how many and what they're doing.
Okay.
I got a question.
Mike?
So we're adding 1 STEAM?
Correct.
So does that bring us to 7 or does that bring us to 8?
That will bring us to 8 bodies and 7.8 positions.
Okay.
Okay.
The last additional budget employee on this page is a math specialist. It would help the math program become more expansive and the special program become more expansive and give a greater reach into the schools for both enrichment of students and remediation for students who need remediation. It increases student support. It will actually allow us to put a math specialist at each elementary school. So each elementary school would have the ability to, have somebody there to provide that math support.
And again, Nicole, can you expand on that?
Sure, this is not a new topic of discussion. I know last year this topic also came up regarding what we believe is to be a big need in adding one additional math specialist to our team. This would allow for one math specialist to be based at every building. In addition to that, the role over the last few years has changed, and so I believe that this would align with that change. Primarily being previously, there was a model where the specialists were providing enrichment for grades 4, 5, and 6. That has expanded to also remediation. So again, that on top of MTSS, the role has changed, which you're all very aware of what we're doing with that work, and our specialists, again, as you would expect, those roles are evolving. So we believe it's more important now than ever to make sure that we have this additional team member for our students, and again, to have one specialist per school. And this is similar to our discussion in the past, but we believe the timing this year is, again, very important.
You're saying that we're one short specialist for every elementary school, have you been
They're split,
juggling
similar to
that?
what STEAM, what Andrew is referring to, that we have math specialists that are split between schools. So this would be one full-time person based at every building.
Okay, thank you. Yoda, did you?
Yeah, is one math specialist enough for a whole elementary school? I mean, we need help with math.
So right now, our specialists, whether they're math specialists, literacy specialists, art, phys ed, contractually, they're obligated to a certain number of classes per week. And so, much like you heard Andrea say and Nicole just say, a lot of times, based on the population of that school, our teachers have to travel. And they share, our specialists typically share buildings. And I think if you ask us on the education side, we can never get enough math or reading specialists. But in this scenario that Nicole just shared, this would allow us to have one dedicated math specialist for each building. That's more closely aligned with our literacy specialists at each building. Some of the other areas will still continue to share buildings, whether they're librarians or phys ed teachers or art teachers. But with the expanded role of, and the expanded students that we capture now as part of the math specialist program, as Nicole explained, it's enrichment and remediation, and it's now more than just 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. So I hope I answered your question, but we would always say we want more math specialists if we
I
can
mean,
get.
what would be the optimal to have? Because this is a subject that we definitely have to work on. So it's not, I understand the budget is a different situation because of course we have to, think about how much it's gonna cost. But if we wanna provide the support needed for our students, how many people do we need? How many hours per student? I cannot imagine that one person is enough for the whole school when we know that our math scores are not great. It's not only the scores, it's that we know that we're behind, yeah.
So I can't give you what an optimal number would be, but I can say that the math specialist works on the enrichment side and the remediation side. So they don't see every student in the school every single day. Students are identified as exceptional in terms of the math enrichment. Those math specialists work with those children, and children that are identified as our most needy children in mathematics, the math specialists work with those children. So I don't know that I can offer up a number of people that we need, but that's kind of where we are. We just think that if we believe if we have one dedicated person in each school, we can really focus on that enrichment and remediation. Nicole, do you want to add to that?
I was just going to say that this is a conversation that we are having a lot right now as we look at MTSS and our path forward, moving forward with Tier 2. These are discussions that you'll hear more about moving forward at education community meetings. But with that being said, our leadership team recently met and we're having this exact conversation about support and how support is distributed. They're all healthy and necessary conversations. We need to look at that every year, in terms of each individual school. Do we need more? Do we redistribute? So I will tell you that MTSS, that framework has really brought some really good, productive, and necessary discussions to the surface. So these are, related to staffing. These are conversations that will continue. So I have no doubt that we will have similar ones in the future, and we appreciate the questions, we appreciate the support and being open-minded. So I think as we dig into year 2 of MTSS, as a team on our end, we'll have a better understanding of possible additional, specialists that may be needed in the future to do this work.
Nikki had a question?
More of a, well, kind of a question and kind of a statement. I think all of these bullet items in terms of the employees, and I think Ms. Crawford, you just kind of touched upon it, having MTSS has been almost a year now. We have, the district has this valuable information and data that we're gathering. I think the math specialist is great because it's going to also deal with the Tier 1, Tier 2 level interventions, right? Whether it's enrichment, whether it's intervention. I haven't heard it recently, but over the course of the last 3 to 4 years, we've also talked about scores, PSSA scores, whatever benchmarks, and we talked about learning loss for a long time. Many of the board members sitting here talked about it. So I'm happy to hear that all of these areas, are going to address that. And as students, things change, needs change, our students change. So I'm happy for one, I'm happy to see that we're changing and constantly looking at to see what is going to be the most beneficial to the students of Council Rock. Thank you.
Tracy?
Is there another slide, or are these the budgeted employee, the additional budgeted employees?
There's another slide, yeah.
Okay.
There's more employees?
I'll save mine until, my comment was going to be, we want to do everything we can to empower the teachers in Council Rock to provide an excellent, exceptional educational experience. And, are these the positions that are going to really improve that educational experience for our kids? But I'll retract that and wait until
Wait for the rest.
Wait for the rest.
I agree, that's, so I'm waiting for the next one.
Okay.
Actually, there's 2 more.
Well then,
So the next position would be an addition of a data analyst position. That would be dedicated to data analysis, including being responsive to PSSA data. It provides resources for, the position would create and provide resources for data-driven instruction and decision-making. I think in this day and age, we have so much is based on data and what we get from the state that this position would be valuable to increase that.
Who
does it now? Who does it now? So,
Anne, did you?
yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay.
We do not have a dedicated data analyst. We have used Dr. Barnes, who is one of our school psychologists out of Council Rock North. He's a statistics guru and college professor. So we have gone to tap into Dr. Barnes in the recent year and a half or so. But we do not have a dedicated data scientist or data analyst on staff.
What is Dr. Barnes' position right now?
School psychologist.
Oh, okay.
And Anthony, now, can you weigh in on data analyst, expand on it a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, Dr. Barnes is currently school psychologist at Council Rock High School North. We typically bring him out in the fall when we discuss the PSSA and Keystone schools. And it's getting a little bit more complicated. He talks a lot about longitudinal studies and what exactly the data means. Because sometimes you're presented with this enormous amount of data, and it really takes a critical mind and someone who understands statistics to really unfold that and make sense of it. And ultimately, if we have someone in that position, hopefully that will inform our instructional decisions. We look at the wealth of data, we're talking about DIBELS, Acadian, STAR, PSSA, SAT, AP, and we just really would find it valuable if we had an analyst to make sense of that data for us, to pick out the anomalies, to point out the trends when we are performing very well, so we can continue to do that good work. And those areas where we're falling down a bit, kind of shoulder that out. So this is a position we have talked about internally often, and you've seen it in action a little bit with Dr. Barnes, but certainly it would be more extensive than that.
Yeah, I see this as a proactive position. This would be the oversight, the overseer of, we talk about math specialists, reading specialists, somebody to look at the standardized state data, the universal screeners to see where's our need, and then we can guide our professional development. We can look at some issues or curricular reviews or even MTSS interventions to ameliorate or to fix those issues that need to be fixed as we go along. So we're not surprised by the PSSA. So I see this as an integral component to a strong curriculum instruction department.
To relate it to the classroom, one of the other things that data analysts will do is we just implemented a program called Link It, which we're putting data in, and the expectation is that the teachers will be using that application as well to review information about the students that they have each year. One of the things the data analysts will also be able to do, we have a lot of work laid out for them, is to assist in the schools with helping the teachers understand how this data can be used directly to impact the educational process in their classrooms.
Did you still have a question, Mike?
Mr. Hickey can go first.
Okay.
All right, I have two, and one reverts now back to the previous screen. But the first one is this data analyst position, is that a full-time position? Yeah. So this is something that someone would need to be full-time, because I know like Dr. Barnes, for example, I don't think he spends a full-time day doing the data, analyzing the data that we currently have. But okay, that's easy enough, it's a full-time position. My other question as it relates to the smorgasbord of items that we want, and maybe we get to do this a la carte, what we want and don't want. What I didn't see on there, and I'm not sure whether or not we need it, want it, how well our reading program is working now, but even though we have reading specialists at each one of our elementary schools, is that sufficient, in your opinion, to take care of what we need? I mean, like I said, I get it. What I didn't see in here was any reading specialist. Surprised it's not a request. I mean, you can request, the answer can always be no, but do we have enough reading specialists to handle our needs?
As I said earlier, I think that is something that we are talking about right now in terms of where our support lies, looking at the data, and that's going to continue. I think the way that we approached today was also prioritizing, and math has been an ongoing need, as you know, since last year we've been, talking about that, position, and so I think that was where our first priority lied, but I think we definitely need to continue to take a look at our literacy support, how it's distributed in each building. There are buildings that may have even more than one, so we're asking, okay, is that because of solely enrollment? What are the needs? Do our schools with the most needs have the support? But again, these are conversations that are coming to light right now, particularly with the latest data comparing beginning of the year and middle of the year MTSS data, and then we'll be doing that again at the end of the year.
And would the 2 ELD specialists that you're looking to bring on, would that also help alleviate the concern for the reading specialists?
There's some crossover. I think Shannon Hubeck, the coordinator, could speak even more specifically about that. There is some crossover for sure, that there are some needs, but I would say primarily it is for solely those ELD learners that just need more. We need more people to support them and even learning their basic, their basic language. And also, again, the high school, particularly Council Rock High School South, has been in need for, the last year for some additional support.
Thank you.
I think if I could go back, Mr. Hickey, to that, the data analyst, there's an acronym, DRIP, Data Rich Information Report, and you heard Al rattle off a bunch of things, and Matt and Nicole, from Linkit to PSSA to Keystones. That person would be able to narrow down and pinpoint exactly what Anthony said, look for gaps or trends in the data. Because right now, we know we have a great tool in Linkit to collect all that data, and we have a lot of data, but the question is, what do we do with it? And that person would help drive the direction of what we do with that data, whether it's the Swiss data from MTSS, or whether it's the Acadians data or the Dibbles data.
Okay.
Tracy?
So I think kind of dovetailing onto Mr. Hickey's point, we want to make sure that the positions that we're adding are directly benefiting our students. And I certainly see that it's important to make the best use of this data. That we have a lot of data, and we want to make sure that that we know what we can learn from it, or we learn what we could from it. My question is, this seems to me, from my kind of business background, this seems to me ripe for a consultant. Are there consultants that, could maybe have more experience with combining all these different tests? I mean, we're not the only district that's using MTSS and Dibbles and has all these things. I'm sure that there is a consulting agency out there that could probably could help with the seasonality, right? This is like a seasonal thing, as you said, like, PSSAs and different data points come in at different times, and would be more experienced than somebody we could hire. These are new tests, but if the same firm is doing it in other districts, they have that much more experience with it, could look at things more deeply, more specialized areas, and maybe we could save some money if we could outsource this. So is that something that exists?
So we explored that a few years ago. One of the biggest problems we have with the consultant is, first of all, the data, while the exams are seasonal, the data is not. It's a yearly process. It is, once you get into it, it's just amazing the amount of data that's there, and then trying to sort it out. Mr. Barnes has been doing this in the evenings. Some people whittle, some people like to go kayaking. Mr. Barnes loves to do data. Yeah, anyway, so we've looked at the consulting organizations out there. The biggest problem with them is that they don't know Council Rock. And while I can say they may know the K-12 environment, this district is different. If you've been to every building, the culture in each building is different. And we felt when we talked about this originally, and the reason that we got Dr. Barnes involved is we wanted an educator who'd been in the district, who knew the district, who actually knew how to do the statistical stuff. He also teaches at, I think it's Rider University.
Right.
He teaches the stats course there as well. So we could, but a lot of districts have already gone to the process where they've hired their own data analyst. In fact, I think Pennsbury just appointed a director of data at the cabinet level because it's so critical to what we're doing today. So when looking at other districts, most districts have someone on staff dedicated to doing the data analysis because it is really helpful for explaining to you guys the success of programs or initiatives and all of that other stuff, as well as feedback to the teachers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I still wonder, if there might be an opportunity.
The short answer that there are consultants out there. Yes.
Yoda?
Yeah, so if you look at the macro level, data analytics is has been for a while like one of the hottest topics because there's so much information out there, and we get all this information and we had no idea how to process it and how to do it. And it sounds like, especially with the MTSS and the new, and we have all the exams, I don't know if one person would be sufficient to do all this. I mean, it is a lot of work. I have a statistics background, so I understand what Dr. Barnes was talking about and so on. It's very important to hire the right person. Because if they're not really, I mean, I would not go as a look internally for somebody like that. And it doesn't matter if it's a consultant or if it's like an employee, but this person has to have the right qualifications to be able to sort through all this and present it in a way that we will be able to easily understand. And also we have to communicate, I think, with the parents, because they all ask more data about their children and their performance, how did they do versus the future, what can be done differently. So, I mean, it makes sense what you just said, Matt, that, you know, other districts have like more resources on that. And very grateful Dr. Barnes has done that for us, but as you said, it's not his like really his day job. And I know he presented a lot of good information last time, but it was not enough. We all had more questions for him. And he wasn't able, you know, he couldn't do everything. Yeah.
If he could do data all day, every day,
So maybe you think he's going to apply for the job?
or I think he probably would.
Okay. So then I take this back. It can be some of cancer as long as they have this qualification.
I think one of the important things is, if this moves forward, that we have clear expectations, whether it's a consultant or an external candidate or an internal candidate, clear in terms of what our expectations are, so we can use that information to inform our teachers and help our students.
Right.
I was just going to say one other thing about consultants can be very valuable because of the outside experience that they have. But I think an employee in this case has a vested interest in in understanding the data and getting the data, the correct data out for us to act on. So that's the only reason why I'd lean towards an employee.
I think
Mike, did you?
Thank you. A couple of the questions that I had have been answered. I was interested to know, would this actually be Dr. Barnes? I remember him being a fixture around this table last year and how impressively helpful not only his presentation, but his data analytics was with the knowledge of Council Rock and his background. So it seems like it's not Dr. Barnes. We're going to find somebody else. I guess that's the first part.
I think to be fair to the district and to all applicants, we have if the board chooses to move forward with this, we have a hiring process that's rigorous that we go through. And if Tom is one of the applicants, we would love to talk to him. But we're interested in looking for the best person and the best fit for our students.
Yeah, well, that's great. I think that it was something that I missed this year, is having Dr. Barnes to look at some of the analytics. And it was something last year when we were comparing middle school math scores and how effective that was, how amazing it would be to get him to go, or get anybody to go beyond that. So I'm in support of this data analyst. I think it's a great tool to help Council Rock be responsive, as Dr. Senko indicated, with the drip, right? We have a lot of data that comes through, somebody that understands Council Rock, somebody that can make informative decisions and analytics out of that, so that the district can be responsive to find the gaps and to find the trends. And as well, I'm hoping that this position would also be responsive or symbiotically connected with curriculum coordinators and educational directors to make sure that this really is following through full cycle. I'm seeing some heads nod, so that's positive. That's all I had to say about the data.
Any other comments or questions?
The next position.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Nikki?
Yeah, sorry, real quick, the middle school hall monitors, is this a new position or are we adding to the hall monitors
You
that
want
we're
us to
currently?
jump to that one, or do you want
We
to?
didn't-
We're not there yet.
Oh, we're not there yet? I'm
No.
sorry. Never mind.
It's good, we're on
Take it back. Tony will address it.
HR supervisor,
The
right?
HR supervisor, so we currently have one employee, that would be Ronnie, who is able to fulfill Act 93 level tasks, meaning there are certain things that you have to be an administrator in order to work on. If you look at other human resources departments of comparably sized districts, they employ more than one Act 93 employee. There is an inordinate amount of tasks that need to be done. I believe our nearest neighbor that's larger than us has 4 other people besides the director who are at that level. We talk about the budget. It's not just me, and everybody has a hand in the budget. It's not just my department. There's a lot of work that Ronnie needs to get done that only he can do because he's the only Act 93 employee when it comes to deciding, removing employees who are retiring, replacing them, moving through that process. So as I say, he's a very busy man, and human resources serves our teachers. It also our teachers and our other employees. It also it keeps keeping teachers happy and keeping good teachers around, dealing with issues with other employees that need to be dealt with, which is again another Act 93 issue. I feel like that. I think we think that this position is necessary, and it will help keep help us to retain good teachers.
Any questions or comments? Yes, Mike?
How many do we currently have in the HR department?
We have
Employees as a total?
5 people in HR. 6 if you count. We do have one person who's kind of acts as a receptionist, but also does some work for human resources.
So is this moving one of them to Act 93, or is this opening up a new position like the data analyst who would be looking internally, externally, and all around?
Yes.
Okay. So this would bring us effectively to 6.
Yes.
But only 2 of them would be Act 93.
Yes.
Okay. Just to rewind a little bit, we had 10 math specialists with this new ad. Do we currently have 10 reading specialists also?
Look up the exact number.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be a larger number than 10.
Yes,
We'll
I think
have
it's like 12
Some have additional.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
The only other thing I would point out with the HR supervisor, it's essentially the only department that doesn't have a manager in it. In IT, we have a manager, in the business office, we have an assistant BA. So it does help right size us a little bit with the size of the district.
Any other questions about HR? Okay,
An endpoint technician in the information technology department. Again, the district continues to add more devices all the time. We continue to provide faster and better service. This again would be another new position. And I'd like to add that.
Only that when we went to 1-to-1, we did not adjust the size of the staff to accommodate the number of Chromebooks. And I will shout out right now that the librarians have been doing a Herculean effort in providing support to the Chromebooks, way above and beyond what I would have ever expected. So if you see a library assistant, thank them. But I've been doing some research in the last probably month looking at ratios, and the industry has moved. It used to be the number of individuals that you supported, now it's based on the number of devices. I currently have 8 people in the department that support roughly 2,400 devices apiece. If you look at all devices across the district, And the ratio that is recommended, and this is based on a lot of different sources, is 1 technician for every 1,000 devices. So to right-size the department, you really need 12 people, based on the number of devices in the department, or in the district. And that's based on Chromebooks, iPads, desktops, laptops. We've been able to reduce the number of desktops because we went 1-to-1. So Chromebooks are a little bit easier to manage than desktops. But what we're doing now is we're putting the desktops, each classroom will have a dedicated desktop so that when a teacher is out sick and the substitute comes in, they have the technology they need to run the lessons. They don't have to worry about, there's no laptop there. So this endpoint technician is desperately needed.
Tracy?
How many endpoint technicians do you currently have?
8. Well, actually, I have 6 endpoint technicians, and I have 2 system administrators. My system administrators support all of the servers. Between the 2 of them, they support roughly 4,000 devices. All the switches, all the access points, all the firewalls,
Okay, so
all of the networking.
you currently have
Servers.
6, and what does their day look like?
Chaos.
Is there, they
Each
move around
technician's-
schools, I assume?
So each technician's assigned a building, a primary building and a secondary building. So when one of the technicians is out, they have a backup. They prioritize their tickets that they get. If a teacher's having an issue, they put in a ticket. They prioritize tickets based on the number of classrooms being impacted. Like if the internet's down in a building, that takes a higher priority than Mrs. Jones's monitor's not working because she didn't plug it in or something. So those are the priorities. And then each technician has multiple buildings that they're responsible for.
Okay, and this wouldn't change that? I mean, you're obviously not getting to.
No, it
14
wouldn't change
buildings.
it. I mean, ideally, if I had my druthers, I'd have a dedicated
Yeah.
technician in each building, but I don't know that we'll ever be able to afford that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just a confirmed stat, did you indicate that we had how many devices in the district?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. The networking devices are right, because I just saw that number a few minutes ago. It's roughly 4,000.
Okay.
And if we look at the desktop and computing devices, that's right around, well, we have a little over 14,000 Chromebooks. And then we have roughly additional 5,000. It's close to 20,000 devices.
Okay, yeah, because I thought I heard an 8,800 number, I don't know what that was. But I might have misheard, that's why I wanted to clarify. Okay.
So, and you said normally you have 1 technician per how many, per 1,000 devices?
The documentation
You
that I've
see that?
seen lately has stated that, and the reports are all over the place, but in general, 1 technician to support 1,000 devices.
So we have 9 to support 20,000,
Technically, we have 8.
8 to support.
But these devices, I mean, a lot of them are Chromebooks, which you said are a little easier, and, you know, they're not doing
They're
necessarily as
easier,
much.
but
I mean, the
they eat
teachers.
up a lot of our time,
Yeah.
surprisingly enough.
Little stuff.
I mean, we're working a lot of, I would say that there's a motto out there, you know, do more with less. I'd say we're at that wall, we can't do any more with any less. But one of the things we have done is we've tried to streamline things as much as possible. Donald Bausch, who's one of my managers, who's phenomenal, he and I were meeting this week. We're going to put together some documentation and get it into the hands of the students and their parents to allow them to try to fix the most common issues with the Chromebooks themselves. We don't feel we've done a good job communicating that. The librarians have got to do that. We think that if a parent on a weekend could just hit a couple buttons to fix a problem, they would want to know that. So we're putting together documentation with pictures, and we hope to get that published before the next week. So we're trying those things as much as we possibly can. That's where we want to put it.
Thank you. And,
If I could just jump back to the human resources supervisor for 1 minute.
okay,
I also want to make the point that it is 5 people, including Rondi, in that department right now, upstairs working in the office. That is the smallest human resources department of any district of comparable size in the area. So we do, it is a very lean department that does a great job. And the last budgeted employees would be the addition of 2 middle school hall monitors. Obviously, the point for that would be to provide more support for students in the middle school, during the day. And, obviously, we do the things that a hall monitor would do.
Go ahead, Al.
So to answer this kind of question, we currently do not have any hall monitors at the middle level. We do have hall monitors at the high school level. When we contemplate personnel positions, we try to think about student needs in the classroom and trying to match those personnel needs as close as possible to the classroom. So this would be 2 CRESPA positions. They're not in front of classrooms, they're not doing instruction, but I would argue that they are critical for school climate. So as much as I like to give 7th and 8th graders the benefit of the doubt when it comes to behaviors, it can be a difficult adolescent time, and occasionally they may fall into the behaviors. So just in terms of overall supervision, right now we have 1 security member at each of the middle schools. Fortunately, we're looking at putting middle school SROs in, that will certainly be a help. But other than that, no hall monitors. When we do have lunches, we will bring in some lunch assistance, and that certainly helps with the 400 bodies that we would have, at a given lunch period. But in terms of monitoring, especially unstructured time, for school, after school, in the corridors, transitions, monitoring the restrooms, we really feel like a hall monitor would be a fantastic addition to, just the overall climate at the middle schools.
Thank you. Anything else? Any other questions? Is that it for budgeted employees?
Budgeted employees, yeah. The next thing I'd like to talk about is additional educational initiatives employees. So we would like to implement these positions in 24-25, evaluate the effectiveness of the positions to determine if they should become permanent in subsequent years. Administration is to develop concrete metrics to measure the effectiveness of the positions. So it would be objective standards that we would set to determine if these positions are being effective. Since this is an initiative to improve, that we would like to measure the effect, we can use the educational initiatives fund balance to pay for these. So this would not be an additional use of current year taxpayer money. Obviously, what's in educational initiatives is taxpayer money, but that we would use some of that fund balance to pay for these positions in 24-25. The first item is to have 2 teachers on special assignment, 1 each at Maureen M. Welch Elementary and 1 at Goodnow Elementary. They would be providing support to students and principals in those schools. I believe Nicole has a lot to say about this. But one thing before that, I just want to say that, again, this is us, trying to meet the needs of the concerns of the community in both regular or general education and special education.
So this is also not a new need. I do want to start by saying that. I can speak from personal experience as the principal of Goodnow Elementary School for 13 years. Dr. Sanko knows that this came up as a topic of conversation that I brought to the table several times. And again, for one reason or another, the timing wasn't right to pursue it over those years. But we feel very, very strongly with the fact that when you have schools of that size and with even, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but even students with the district program that is there, you want to look at how you're able to provide the best support and resources to those students and staff that you can. And being one administrator in, for example, Goodnow, the largest elementary school, you're spread very, very thin. And so having that additional person to be able to be there to support students, particularly, and we'll get to this in a minute, a little bit more in depth, students with special needs would benefit that community greatly. And again, I do believe that this is a need that has been present in these schools for some time now. I also want to bring up Welsh Elementary School. While it's not enrollment-wise quite as large as Goodenough Elementary School, we do believe that the support that this person's teacher on special assignment would bring to those students and those students with special needs, we believe would greatly benefit them. This would also be very responsive to some of the parent questions that we've gotten over the year about special needs and how, we are providing those, resources to those, to those students and families. Just to give you an idea of surrounding districts, because I was curious myself who had either assistant principals, dean of students and whatnot, just to give you a sense. Ben Salem, they have one school with an assistant principal, Bristol Township, 3 elementary schools. And again, larger enrollment numbers in those buildings. Centennial School District, all 3 elementary schools have assistant principals. Central Bucks School District, 5 out of their 15 elementary schools. Again, talking with my counterparts in those districts, sometimes it's because of enrollment, sometimes it's because of the additional needs in those schools, or it's a combination of the two. We also have Morrisville with 1 assistant principal and Quakertown with 2. Sometimes they're split between the schools. But again, because this would be new, we really feel that starting with a teacher on special assignment who has an administrative certification, it's a win-win. Our students and our community wins, with the additional support that they would provide, but also we have quite a few teachers in the district, when we look at succession planning, who have their administrative certifications. They're yearning for those leadership opportunities, particularly in Council Rock, and there just aren't enough positions to go around. So we do believe that it would allow those folks in the district to be able to apply for these positions, serve as teachers on special assignment, and get some administrative experience. But we do want to reinforce that this would not be a position where they're supervising teachers. That would be the principal's role. This would be about supporting students and staff in those buildings. And I'd love for Mr. Dedlin to dive a little bit deeper into that special education piece.
I would just like to add that, and providing support to families.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I could use Maureen Welsh for an example, that's a school within a school, and we're working with some students who have some significant needs, and some families who are working with us as well. And there are times that we would really, would benefit those families to have one consistent point of contact there to work with the families. As we see these incremental changes in support for the students, it would really help the families a lot. Again, this is in response to some of the concerns I've been receiving in terms of our programs. And Maureen Welsh, Goodenough, we have another school within a school, and more so than assisting the teachers, I'm really concerned about the students, the relationship with our teachers and with our principals, and I believe this will be a step in the right direction to provide that white glove treatment for our families there.
So is this, as you say, these are initiatives that will be reviewed to determine if they are to continue,
Yes.
right? And these teachers would not have class assignments per se?
No.
All right, so they really are administrative,
With a focus on again.
focus on
students.
special education.
Well, not necessarily that was just one component, but on the students, as opposed to, again, supervising and observing teachers formally. That would still rest on the
Principal.
The principal's role.
They would not be administrators. They would be a teacher on a special assignment. They would follow the same contractual year as a teacher with the same salary that they're earning. If you had a teacher who's in their 3rd year, who's one of those two, and a teacher that's in their 5th year, who's the other, whatever salary they would get for teaching 5th grade or 3rd grade, they would get that salary. They would not have administrative responsibilities, observing teachers.
And they would not be teaching,
They would not be going into their typical 3rd grade classroom to teach.
so you're really looking at taking someone that are already in those schools to move into those,
In the district, not necessarily in those schools.
which means then you will probably then be replacing them with regular teachers.
These positions would be budgeted at the new teacher rate, rather than well, actually, most of these positions would be because.
Because you're looking at it as a promotion, an internal.
Internal would be taking on that position. So eventually, whatever class that person was teaching would eventually be filled by a new teacher, because if another teacher wanted the position that the person moving into special assignment had, then eventually though, we'd have to find a new teacher to replace them. And we start all our teachers out at the same level, depending on education.
Okay, Bob?
Got a few questions, I guess. You answered one of them. So for example, this program is successful. What happens in year 2? Do we roll this down to 10 elementary schools now?
Our 10 elementary schools would not need this, so we're looking to see where the greatest need is. One of the roles of the teacher on special assignment is to gather more data. So when I was talking or sharing, we were talking about this idea. When I was going back into our student information system, so I wanted to see, because I'm hearing a lot of things, a child's being kicked out of class or this, that, or the other things. A lot of times it's not out of malice or really somebody trying to be bad, so to speak. It's just a manifestation of the child's behavior. So a lot of this behavior isn't really reported disciplinary-wise. So when we go back to see, I'm hearing a lot of concerns, and I've been in buildings a lot of times. When I go track the records, it's not really in our SIS. When I want to see how many times has a room been cleared, how many times is that. So the part of this role would be to gather that data, to see what is needed. Again, these are the high-flying buildings. Another thing we want to do is, again, to be proactive. If we can effectively address the antecedents and learn from what we're doing there, maybe we don't need these people in the future at all.
Yeah, because my other question, like I said, because if it does work, we're gonna be looking at 10, and if it doesn't work, then I guess we jettison the 2 special assignment teachers back to their classroom, and we find something to do with the 2 teachers in their place. Because obviously we'd have to post 2 positions in one way, shape, or form. My other question is there any way to split the difference? While this may be a wonderful idea, as I always try to think of these things, once again, does it require somebody to do this all day? Is it something that can be done where he's a 0.5 teacher and a 0.5 special assignment person? And that way he still has his salary, he's still on the same, he or she is still on the same scale or whatever you'd like to say, but your recommendation is we need a quote-unquote 1.0 full-time teacher to do this at either school or at both schools.
If I may, this has been, again, a need that has been present for some time now. When you look at one administrator in a building of, for example, 687 students, I could know. On top of that, some of the students that, the needs and the support that we talked about, that's one administrator. We really want to see that if having one additional person there to help support that school community, we want to try it first with the recommendation from the team to really see what that looks like, sounds like, and if it's working. My worry about splitting is if it ends up not working well, is that because that person wasn't there enough? Or, we really believe the recommendation being one person to be based there would give us a true sense of if this is effective. Again, with Welch, just to give everyone the number, about 531 students enrolled at Welch. So it is smaller than Goodnow, but when you look at some of the things that Mr. in terms of support that we can provide, additionally at that building, we feel definitely those 2 schools are in most need of this additional support. Just an example, when you take a smaller school, and I've lived that too. My first principal assignment was in 2006 to 2009 at Wrightstown Elementary School. At the time, it was 350 students. So I've lived in both worlds, being in the smallest school and the largest, and, you know, there are needs in the smaller schools too, but in terms of having that additional person there to partner with, I do believe comes with some additional enrollment, larger numbers, and some of the schools that we just spoke about, which are clearly, I think, you can see in the two schools that we just spoke about. And again, I just wanted to reinforce that we certainly don't want to send the message that this is in response to the principals. This has been an ongoing need for many, many years when I was in that role as well.
Just going back to your first question, Mr. Hickey. So if this moves forward, essentially we would be lifting up 2 teachers, to Mrs. Stone's question, 2 that are currently teaching or have, you know, a professional role as a professional staff member. They would go to those 2 positions. We would backfill that with long-term subs, which is not uncommon. So for the course of the year, that whatever role is vacated by the contracted employee, it would be backfilled with a long-term sub. And then at the end, once we do an analysis to see if this is a benefit, if this is a direction we want to go, and the board supports it, then if we move in that direction, we would post and apply for those jobs that those teachers vacated. If we chose to say, or go in a direction that it did not give us the benefit that we believe it will, then those people on special assignment would return back to the classroom that they left.
Thank you.
Yoda?
Yeah. So, to me, these are the 2 least well-defined positions from everything that is on the budget. And I would understand if it's primarily for special ed, because there is a need in these 2 schools. But how can we single out these 2 schools when we have 10 elementary schools? Why do we need this there desperately? What did we do in the past? I mean, and again, you take these teachers, and then is the teacher the best person to do this job if this kind of administrative position is needed? Or we're better off leaving the teachers and then maybe find somebody? I mean, it depends what the qualifications are. It's not very clear to me what the qualifications are, and exactly what the position is, and why these 2 schools. I don't know if you have the answers, but something to talk about.
Well, the first, I'll tackle the easy ones first. The first is qualifications. We would be looking for someone that has an administrative certificate, as Nicole mentioned, in addition to supporting the students in those schools. We also want to use this as an opportunity for succession planning. Many, many years ago, Council Rock had teachers on special assignment, and folks came up through the system. Mike Reed, Mark Klein, Dan Greenland, and some others have come up through the system because they had an opportunity to go and live on the administrative side of things. So that's kind of like an adult part. The child part is, as Anthony said, both of those schools, and they're not alone, they have a school within a school. We have district special ed classes in those 2 buildings, and we have heard loud and clear from our community about support for our special needs students, and that's why those 2 schools have been identified. I don't think that, we didn't think it would be a good idea to come here and ask for 10 teachers on special assignment. To your point, we have 10 elementary schools. We need to ascertain whether this is going to be a benefit or not. Nicole shared other districts and what they're doing with assistant principals at the elementary level. And this, for us, would be a jumping off point rather than talking to the board for a commitment of an Act 93 principal 262-day-a-year contract. Financially, it costs less than going the Act 93 route. And it also gives us a chance to, as Tony said, develop the metrics. What do we want to see from this person? What's the scope of the job? Some of it will be administrative in nature, but they won't be administrators. And some of it will be the engagement with the students and families, as Anthony talked about.
Oh.
No, you may.
What I was going to ask or suggest or find out if you've got that in the plan, if we approve this, I would be concerned that a principal would utilize these individuals to be their assistant and take time away from special assignment and working with the kids in the, just a normal. And is there a way for you to do some 360 review? Or, you know, to make sure that it's on track, that that individual is not just being an administrative support, feeling like they're being moved into a principal role, and to make sure that they're still doing the other tasks that because otherwise it'll fail as well. So some kind of a automatic, periodic review. Regular.
I'm sorry, I mean,
Go ahead.
some of the expectation is that they will be assisting the principal in some capacity. I can't say that we have flushed out the complete job description. We have the big ideas, the high level ideas. But the expectation would be that for back to school night, the principal is still the principal addressing back to school night. The weekly message comes home from the principal. Their job would certainly not be an administrative assistant to the elementary principals, but another body to support those kids in those schools that we've talked about. And at the same time, on the other side of it, look at growing our talent internally. I don't know, Nicole, if you want to add to that.
Ed?
I think it's really smart to pilot it on a one-year basis, and the cost being that of a long-term sub as opposed to an administrative level. I think that's very smart. I'm wondering, Dr. Sanko, Ms. Crawford, if you would say that this kind of position is necessary today, but might not have been 10 years ago. Do you think the demands are greater on a principal today than 10 years ago?
Yes. I think that the roles of teachers, principals, support staff, they're always evolving. And so I would say that for sure would be factual, that the position has evolved. And when you look at, again, some of the larger buildings or buildings that have some of the needs that we spoke about, you have one principal. Trust me, the principal wants to be the head leader in classrooms, giving teachers feedback, working with students, engaging with families. But when you're one person in a building, like we explained, and there are things that need your attention and problem solving, and sometimes, it takes you away from being able to be that person who's the instructional leader and in the classrooms. That's where you want your principals to be. And so I do believe this additional support will help students and will also give us a sense of what that will do to help the position, the pendulum to swing a little bit back further for, in these two pieces where you're in classrooms, you're visible. And they're certainly doing that now. But again, I do believe it's more of a challenge in these two buildings because of what we already spoke about. And again, personally, that's what I found over the course of a decade plus of being in that building, that it became harder and harder to be able to do some of those things because you felt like you were the one person putting out fires and addressing things in real time. And I do believe this would positively impact students and staff and beyond that.
Thank you.
And I think Nicole said that very well. It's, we want our building administrators to be the instructional leaders, and we want them on the floor in a kindergarten classroom and going out to recess and doing walkthrough observations of teachers. And we believe that the addition of this would at least loosen that up a bit in those two particular buildings.
Mike, Nikki, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, listening to this conversation brings a couple things to mind, and I'm not expecting anybody here to have this information, but you may. When we're talking about this position, the two teachers on special assignment, and we're speaking specifically about Goodnow and MMW, it makes me wonder, do we have a ratio or a comparative enrollment population for special education kids in these schools to general education, students with IEPs and 504s to those that don't? Do we have a ratio of kids that might be, in elementary, it might be a little early for full gifted analysis, but that same sort of thing. I think that it might be interesting to understand what are both the ratios of teacher to student as well as these different populations of our students in these various different schools. And I'm deducing from this conversation that they're higher in these two particular schools, at least some of these categories.
In MMW, for instance, so we have 4 classrooms of our emotional support program. At the elementary level, the students present with needs that are significant and take a lot of time, take a lot of nurturing, take a lot of compassion. And that's why we're looking at MMW. Goodenough, we have a large autistic support program where our students are able to be in a general education classroom most of the time. And with that comes sometimes more support needed in terms of possible manifestations and so forth. So that's why we're looking at these 2 buildings at first.
And those are higher than the other 8 elementary schools.
They are higher than the other 8 elementary schools. Some of the other elementary schools have more self-contained programs that are not experiencing the level of need that we see in these 2 buildings, and that's why these 2 buildings have been selected.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I deduced. It would still be helpful to understand what these ratios are and these identifications for this, in the idea of the data analyst, to understand really where these gaps and these trends are, and where, as an administration, you can look for opportunities for support. I think that would be interesting to look at.
Nikki, did you have?
I just wanted to add that I actually had this position as previously when in education, and I know, Ms. Stone, when you're asking about your relationship and where this time is going, part of my role as a dean of students was the fact that 80% of my time was spent with students, and it was the half the building, of over 700 students. And in that, I think a lot of this deals with creating relationships with those students. Classroom teachers don't have that opportunity, whether in special education with their students or in a general education classroom, to take a walk or give that student a 2-minute break or talk about their day before they get to start their day with their general education class, where I was that support person. So whether I was supporting first the students, then the teachers, and then I was fully communicative with the families. I mean, I knew all the families, I knew their home lives. It just becomes another person to help every student. And it wasn't just special ed students. It could be ED students, it could be any student in the school, honestly, from kindergarten through 8th grade. And at the end of the day, there were a few administrative tasks, but that was the last thing. But it frees up the teacher to do their teaching. It frees up the principal to do their leadership role that they need to do on a daily basis. I'm surprised Council Rock hasn't done this in the past, because we are such a large serving district. So there's just like a little bit of feedback from my personal experience. Granted, it was many years ago, but students are still students. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have comments? So we can move on?
Okay. For some of you, this is a familiar topic. The 2 assistant athletic directors, one at CR North and one at CR South. We have the athletic directors in those schools are both assistant principals that also have a grade level assignment. The athletic directors would help with event coverage, staffing, scheduling, transportation, budgeting, and other items. And they would both of these positions would be support staff positions to help the athletic directors of each school.
Are they part-time, full-time? How does that?
Full-time.
Yeah, we would envision this to also be a CRESPA position, a 10-month position. This is, again, another long-standing conversation that we've had at Council Rock, and we did come before, I believe it was the Education Committee last year to discuss this. We had our two principals and our existing athletic directors. We've had very high turnover in the athletic director role. And I believe a lot of that has to do with the fact that we are asking for these two major responsibilities, to be a grade level principal of 500 students, often 400 to 500 students, and then also simultaneously to be director of athletics. So of course, in the winter months, that often means that you're starting your day at 7 a.m. and then you're ending your day at 10 p.m. And then, in the fall, we have Friday night football and then weekend contests. So a lot of this is about athletic event coverage, but the person would also be able to look what we kind of envision, and we're very cognizant of return on investment, and this would not be an Act 93 position. But we envision some flex hours so that the person might come in at 12 p.m. And work until 8, they might come in at 1 p.m. and work until 9, so they would have some overlap with the athletic office. They certainly could be involved in some scheduling, whether that's rescheduling contests that are rained out or inclement weather. They could help with the transportation for the athletic teams. They could certainly help with officials' contracts, lining up the officials, athletic inventory, ordering of equipment, ordering of uniforms. There's an awful lot to do within this realm, and we really envision this person, one at each school, freeing up time for the athletic director, who still would be the director of athletics and oversee everything, and still go to many of these events, to also, most importantly, do some of the principal work. Oftentimes, there's conflicts just in terms of having availability with the time constraints that are involved in these positions. So, we were considering, making a position where the requirement would be a bachelor's degree, preferably in sports management or a related field, or someone with previous high school experience to do that. Offsetting costs, and I don't know if you consider it cost savings, but if this person was managing all those nighttime events, currently we hire game managers, and that's cost, obviously. So this person would assume that responsibility, so there would be some offsetting costs involved. But again, this is, I think when we did our presentation last year, we talked about Suburban 1, we talked about District 1, and we threw a lot of statistics. We didn't need Dr. Barnes to analyze this. We're clearly an anomaly when it comes to having an assistant principal and an athletic director. And like the conversation we just had with the teacher on special assignment, it's interesting. Just because we haven't had positions doesn't necessarily mean that maybe we should have considered them earlier. And then conversely, the opposite is true. Just because comparable school districts have positions doesn't necessarily mean that we need those exact positions. So, we always try to strike that balance to support student needs, and this would go a long way in supporting the needs of our student athletes.
Anne, did you have a question?
So can you explain then how, if the assistant director, principal has athletic director, right, like part-time? Is that part-time, or is that full-time, or?
The current assistant
Yeah.
principal, it's full-time.
So why what's the balance between a full-time athletic director and having an assistant principal?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So if the assistant principal also takes on the athletic person, and now that's on, would it be beneficial to have a full-time athletic director?
Well, that's something that we did talk about last year.
Okay.
To have a full-time athletic director. That would, in most school districts, that would be an Act 93 position. And as many different school districts, there's a lot of different composition of athletic departments. We felt that we haven't had this additional support. We thought, again, this is under our educational initiative and a pilot. We would be very cognizant of making sure that we have some metrics and some barometers, and we can report back to the board on whether we think this is successful, whether it needs to be tweaked. But we thought this was a good entry point with two Prescott positions to support the athletic departments. Does that help?
Yep.
And as Al said, out of the SOL or District 1, we're an anomaly. But when you look at all the other districts, it ranges really from soup to nuts. There are some districts that have a full-time athletic director, an assistant athletic director, and an administrative assistant. There are some school districts that have the assistant principal as one person and an athletic director as a separate person. And the number of people and the models vary across District 1, across the Suburban One League, and also across the state.
Yeah, I've been a part of these conversations before. I'm not sure if you're actually going to get a CRESPA employee to cover that position. I feel that, like you said, you're talking about hundreds of student athletes. So when we talk about, are we assisting students with all of our hires, even though it supposedly isn't a quote-unquote educational advantage, the after-school activities of what these kids do is part of your educational experience. As I've said before, if you go to school and you come home, school stinks. So, you're probably talking, probably over half the student population. I fully support this. I would like to see it be another position. I mean, we've had conversations this year at this table of things that have fallen through the cracks as a result of not being able to keep our eyes focused on what should be happening, in that venue. So I'm willing to give it a shot. I'm not sure if you're gonna find what you're looking for, and we may have to actually go a little further in our pursuit of this.
No, I appreciate your comments, and I think you're right on. I think the price point for this salary-wise is important in terms of attracting the right candidate. We talked about, right now, we have 2 athletic trainers, one at each high school, and they are under CRESPA. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, but I believe that's correct. But they also have specialized agreements, if you will. So, this might be something that goes down that avenue, which allows us to broaden our candidate pool a bit, because it would be important to get the right individual with the right background and experiences for this role. It's a tough ask. When you're asking somebody to do a 12 to 8 or a 1 to 9 or 2 to 10, that's a tough ask. But, when you look at, and I kind of look at kind of both ends of the spectrum when I say bachelor's degrees, sports related, sports management, might you have somebody who's, freshly out of university who really has a zeal and passion for athletics? It could be an ideal candidate, absolutely. Might you, on the kind of the other end of the spectrum, have more of someone, not necessarily in retirement mode, but has a wealth of experience in high school athletics who would really kind of welcome this type of position. That's our hope, but I absolutely appreciate what you're saying.
Can you explain to me the organization then at the high schools? You just said there's an athletic instructor,
Athletic director.
so you have an athletic
Trainer.
Trainer, yes.
So how does
So
that fit in with the assistant principal and the trainer and then an assistant?
So
Athletic.
each high school has an athletic trainer who is responsible for concussion testing, impact testing, all the physicals, and they are on the field during the events. If a student twists their knee, if you have an ACL, they do the follow-up care. They might wrap the football players with the tape and whatnot. So they're responsible. But they're more like a physical, what you would see in a physical therapist type setting, an athletic trainer. So that's.
How are they paid? Are they?
Well, they're a member of CRESPA, but they, because of the hours, similar to this request, they have a specialized agreement.
Tony? Hello, Tony?
I think in Tony's absence, can you also talk about the difference between now the trainer and the athletic director and the difference in responsibilities?
Yeah, so the athletic director is responsible for all aspects of scheduling the contests. They would attend the Suburban One league meetings. They'd be responsible. You'd have to have in-depth knowledge of PIAA, which is kind of the governing body of athletics across the Commonwealth. they're scheduling all their transportation, they're ordering the uniforms, they're hiring the coaches, they're talking to student athletes, they're covering the athletic events, whereas the athletic trainer is more invested in if a student has an injury and making sure that preventative care that may be associated with that particular sport, and certainly any care that is required if a student athlete is injured.
Do they also have teaching responsibilities? Not at all? Okay.
And of course, because high school athletics happen after the school day, that's when you have those flex hours. And then you have weekend events as well.
Yep.
In the regular salary? Not hours, salary. Not hours.
Okay. So, Mike, who are you going to ask?
I'm just filling some time here for Mr. Rapp to come back, but
I apologize.
it's all right. One of the
Long meeting.
Yeah, one of the things that I think this conversation illuminated a little bit is that in Council Rock, we do have some positions that kind of overlap, right, between an assistant athletic director and the main athletic director, and the athletic director and assistant principal. There's different elements here, and then there's some overlaps and there's some isn't. There's other areas within our district that do something similar. So nothing pro or con to this decision, but the concern that I've got with some of these overlaps is accountability, specifics of responsibility, who they're reporting to, and where they're going to break it down. There's a lot of athletes, just to sort of stay on topic of this one. There's a lot of uniforms that need to be ordered. There's a lot of specifics with that. There's a lot of schedules. So having one person that does all of that, I understand might be too much, especially if they're also an assistant principal, right? So I get that, but then where you have these overlaps is the area, the old adage, if everybody's responsible, nobody's responsible. So I've got a lot of confidence in this administration figuring out a lot of that and making sure that nothing falls through the cracks, and I imagine the same would be true here.
And our thinking on this, because I don't disagree with what Mr. Hickey said also, and what Al said with regard to price point, because we have looked and priced out, I think what at least I would consider a gold standard where you have a dedicated athletic director, assistant athletic director, and administrative assistant. But this person underneath this model would report directly to the current assistant principal and athletic director. And you're right that there's overlap in that our athletic directors are ordering everything from softballs to baseball bats. And they're also doing their assistant principal job. Back to your question, Ms. Horner, about, what does it look like? So your point's well taken.
Is this the last slide for?
This one position, yeah.
Okay. Then before you move on, we may have some general questions. I do have one myself. And that is, we're talking about hiring the supervisor, the ELD, all the budgeted positions, right? They're specialist positions. Do they get hired based on that, your hiring schematic, based on their experience, they don't get experience credit, or they fall under a different role for hiring? The
steps.
Your steps.
It depends
Your hiring
on-
pay grades.
It depends on the position. So if it's the Act 93, by example, that we should appear a supervisor of CNI for special education, that would be an Act 93. That would fall under the administrator's agreement. And in that agreement, there are targets or thresholds. If they're hired as a teacher, like we talked about a math specialist, they would fall under the CREA agreement. They would get hired at step one, and they would get credit for any advanced education they have.
But not for any experience.
not for experience.
So, and that would be the same with the STEAM teacher and your ELD?
Correct.
Because it's pretty hard, I think, to bring in those kinds of individuals at those steps that are laid out right now. No one's going to come from another school district to go into level 1 or whatever they.
And we have remained consistent, very consistent in Council Rock with our hiring practices in terms of credits for years of service. Folks that come to us with the additional education, Masters Plus 45, for example, they would get hired at that rate. But we would not just arbitrarily pick and say somebody has 10 years experience somewhere else, they would get 10 years here. We try to maintain consistency on that.
So they're not getting work experience.
Correct.
So how are we going to deal with that? I'm serious. I don't know how you hire somebody that's a specialist and that has to fall into those, that's not getting credit for previous work experience.
This doesn't always happen, but oftentimes what happens is you may have an internal applicant for a vacancy. And that internal applicant, they retain their salary. That remains intact, if you will. And then that creates almost a domino effect. That creates another vacancy in whatever position that they vacated, and then there's a new hire for that position. And oftentimes, that position, it could be easier to find candidates for that.
So are you viewing these as mostly internal promotions, all these positions? So that you're budgeting for a new hire?
I don't know that they would be considered promotions. Let's use the STEAM teacher, for example.
Okay.
Pick an elementary certified teacher who's currently teaching in a K-6 classroom right now, who has 10 years experience in the district. If that person were to apply and be the successful STEAM candidate, they would change roles, but they still fall under the bargaining agreement of CREA. They would maintain their salary, as Al just said, but then to backfill that, if we had to replace them as a 4th grade teacher or a 6th grade teacher, that teacher that would come in new to Council Rock would come in at a beginning teacher salary, plus their education.
Right. I'm just seeing that as that we're not going to gain advantage of hiring from the outside experienced people.
To add to that, this is a model that only supports promoting from within. It does not encourage talent from the outside. And is this something is it a policy? Is this something negotiated with the unions? How did that come to be? I understand that has worked for a while, but we may have to look into hiring people that have the expertise from the outside. I understand the current practice. What is the support for that? Is it the union? Is it the policy? What is it?
It's not the policy, it's not the association, it's current practice and past practice so that we have consistency in hiring, because we do not want to be arbitrary in terms of hiring. So if we have one teacher that comes with 10 years experience from another location, and a teacher that comes with 8 years experience from another location, we do not want to expose the district for not being deliberate in where we hire them on the salary schedule.
But this doesn't happen anywhere else, except maybe in school districts, in the industry or anywhere else. You reward someone for their experience in addition to their education.
Right.
Actually, you reward them for their performance and experience much more than their education.
You can design a system so
Right.
that you are still fair across the board, but it encourages getting, and not being nepotistic in a way.
And it encourages outsiders to apply that are experienced. I don't know what the other school districts do.
I think Dr. Sanko mentioned exposure. I believe one school district in southeastern Pennsylvania at least was sued for hiring practices where offers were made to teachers awarding years of seniority in coming, and that didn't appear to be equitable. It's a difficult thing to do. So at least one school district has been sued for that practice.
Tracy?
Can I agree that maybe it's something that we should look at, but in terms of the budget, I would say that maybe we could revisit this discussion at a business meeting. Maybe we can get some information about other districts, if we are the only one who does this, or if everybody is, everybody starts at ground zero when you transfer. Let's gather some more information. Maybe we can wait until Tony's done with the budget, right? Because we're on against a timeline on that. And then, then we can come to a business meeting where we have all the information and we can discuss it.
Well, the other side of it too would be to change those rates of pay for starting salaries.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, you can look at it that way too.
We're not
but
going to do it
today.
tonight.
Any other questions on?
I want to see the numbers.
And?
So,
Go ahead.
Budget summary.
Bada bing.
After adding these employees, increase of salary and benefits of $1.2 million. We're also increasing educational initiatives use by $385,210. That is the cost of the 4 positions that we spoke about on the last slide. But that would leave us in a deficit, and there is, again, some additional revenues because of the reimbursement from the state. That leaves us in a deficit of $3,410,168. Just as a reference, I would mention that our budget left us with a deficit of, the budgeted deficit was about $2.3 million. So I just want to bring that to your attention. I don't know though that that's something I would want to do every year.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that from the beginning? No, sorry. No, your last sentence about the deficit from.
Last year,
Okay.
our completed budgeted
Thank
deficit was $2.3 million. But keep in mind that we started with a rather large deficit and brought that down. Okay, so.
I don't want to slow things down, but that 2.3 million deficit at year end was anticipated, that we would have a deficit. It was larger at the beginning of the year and we worked it down.
And when we were working on the budget.
Yes.
Yeah, we had a $16 million deficit and we worked it down to $2.3 million. Like I said, I wouldn't want to budget a deficit of $2.3 million every year, which follows the next couple slides.
Yeah, and the 2.3 was covered by our decision to spend from the budget reserve, correct?
Well, yes, if you're not balancing your budget, then you're planning to spend from a reserve.
Okay.
According to the budget.
Yeah.
The real numbers often don't turn out that way because of the conservative budget.
Yes.
Right, that was the last point, that as a result of conservative budgeting, we ended up without a deficit.
Right, when the final numbers come in, and I would expect for this year that we would have done better than budgeted as well.
Right.
It just reduces your margin of error and comfort margin.
Which, again, on a budget of our size, that's a 1% difference.
Yes.
So obviously, a $3.4 million deficit is not preferable. So to cover the new budgeted positions, we would add in a 0.5668% tax increase or 0.774 mils to cover these new budgeted positions. which would bring our deficit down to $2.3 million, which again is last year's budgeted deficit. In addition to that, I would also recommend including a 0.5% tax increase or 0.6858 mils to reduce the deficit. This is just strictly to pay for things like the increase in salaries, contractual increase in salaries, contractual increases in our larger contracts. That's a total as a total percentage of both of these increases, that's a total percentage increase of 1.0668% and a total millage increase of 1.4632. Again, I'd ask you to keep in mind that the Act 1 index is 5.3%. Okay. So moving into the next thing where we've talked about full day kindergarten, and I've recommended that we phase in the tax increase to pay for full day kindergarten. I would ask to add that increase in as well of 0.5700% tax increase or 0.7875 mils for the phasing in. Would also give us some extra money, extra funding to pay for the investigative costs for full day kindergarten that we would need to add. I think though this does require some type of board decision as far as if we are to continue to investigate full day kindergarten. I think as an administration, we have reached the point where we need to either start spending money, and I think we need board direction in that matter to say, how much do we, do you want us to start spending money to move on with these actions? And creating these things, and this increase would allow us to, one thing it would do is it would allow us to have some funds set aside for the investigative cost. The other thing is I talked about using the educational initiatives fund balance to pay for the startup costs for kindergarten, some renovations, curriculum, different things like that. I would also recommend that before we get into the educational initiatives, we would set aside whatever we collect on this tax increase for phasing in full day kindergarten as the beginning point of spending that money. So we don't reach into educational initiatives as far as we did, and some of that money is separated. And then next year we would do that other half of that increase to pay for the cost of teachers. And also keep in mind that this is that number is based on what we've been able to investigate so far. We need more direction in order to go further. To start talking about, this is teachers and specials. To start talking about, aides and some of the other costs related to personnel that we would need to add. They're not factored in yet, but I would say it's a fair assumption that that 0.57 that I'm showing here, again, there's a multiplicative effect. So if we add 0.57 this year and next year, I think we'd be closer to what those other costs would be for those teachers. I don't have a number yet, but I think that's a reasonable. Okay, so that is a total percentage increase of 1.6368%, a total millage increase of 2.25507 mils. That leaves us, I show a deficit, it leaves us with a deficit of 427,711. That, I wouldn't guarantee, I don't know that would be our deficit, because again, I said we would use this money to spend on other things. And just to go back to the last slide, it left us with just the increased amount. The deficit would be 1,435,000, which I think if you think about it, we're not expecting a zero of balanced budget, but we are expecting to have a better amount of deficit budgeted this year than we did last year. If that makes sense. So, I'm sorry. if there's, so I guess if there are questions on this, so I'm not done yet.
Well, then continue on.
Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about, and I brought this to your attention at the Facilities Committee meeting earlier this month, our borrowing power. We do still have 2 schools that need to be renovated, elementary schools that need to be renovated. We have to look at high school projects, renovation projects coming up in the future. This is a slide that I used earlier in the month. It shows our borrowing power. The most that we can borrow from the 24-25 year through 28-29 to 28-29 is $18.85 million. So that's not enough to even pay for 1 school renovation. 28-29, that number does move up to $53,093,000, moves up to 137 in 2040, 2041, but when we start getting into those ranges, we're falling behind on our construction if we're waiting that long. So what I'm recommending in order to set us up to be able to increase our debt service and our debt and our borrowing power, so we are able to program for more construction that we need to do, is I would suggest a tax increase of 1% or 1.3716 mils to increase debt service. Now that does not change our surplus or our deficit, because that money would immediately be transferred into the debt service fund. But that does provide us with some extra funding to borrow more than we're able to now. And it also provides us with the ability to have some funding for years where we might need to smooth out that debt service amount. So we increase the amount that we're transferring in from the general fund, but we would we'd be increasing that amount, but we'd be but we'd also be raising the amount of money that we can afford to pay debt service on.
So 1% is about 1.7 million, right?
Yes, it's
So, and how that's gonna affect,
1,767,450.
how is this gonna affect long-term the money that we will have for, I mean, if we need to renovate all the schools, I mean, we're gonna need much more than that, right?
Yes, but it's a start in 1 year. It also, I don't know if we'll have a bond issue. We had a 24 bond issue. I don't, depends on, again, we need to start talking about construction and the plan for renovations and buildings and what this board wants to do, which, we're at the point where those decisions need to be made. It gives us the ability to be where we're at this year, to help us this year. I certainly don't want to see us add debt service, have to add a large debt service amount in 1 year, where again, we phase it in rather than jump to like a large thing just to increase the debt service in 1 year. We talk about, the cost of a high school project, which again, I don't want to make an estimate, but it's going to be more than $100 million.
Right.
We need to start preparing for that. I don't think it's something we could sit on or ignore, but we need to start preparing for that. And this helps us to do that. And just real quick, so the total millage increase would be 2.6368%, total millage increase of 3.6166, and that would be an annual increase of $166 for the average assessed property, which is about $46,000. So your average assessment is $46,000. That 2.6368%. And I'd also like to bring to your attention the fact that that is less than half of the ACWIN index, that percentage. It is less than half of the ACWIN index. And if you look at other districts in the county and in the area, I think first of all, some districts have more ability to borrow above the 5.3 than we do, depending on different factors. I would say that you would find a range of districts where some districts don't borrow anything, or aren't planning to raise taxes at all, to other districts that are planning to raise taxes above that 5.3%. And this puts us squarely in the middle. I think it's a good point to be at between being responsible fiscal stewards and being responsible fiscal stewards and increasing, in that we're in a balanced position. We're not increasing taxes more than we have to, but we're not ignoring the fact that we have construction, we have needs that have to be met. And the only way that the state, in its infinite wisdom, allows us to raise funds is by real estate taxes, increase our funding that we raise. So I think this is a nice, good place to be in, kind of in the middle there, where we're not, and it gets us improving our education. It gets us set up to prepare for full-day kindergarten, and it gets us set up to start to meet our future building needs. So that's my diatribe.
Thank you. Joe?
So I've been quiet tonight because maybe it's because I've been doing this for a few years, but I have to say that I'm incredibly happy with what you put together. On top of all the extra stuff you've been through, and as I said, I've been through a couple business managers, really good ones. And I'm just like, the way you cut it up and the way you presented it and forward thinking about the building and whether we do kindergarten or not, and all these specials that all these specialists and positions we've been trying to fill for years, they're literally putting it in there at the, just over the 2.5, right? And it's even way under the 2.5, we're throwing in 1, so it's 1.6, we're throwing in 1 for future debt service. Wherever we allocate it ultimately, I think from my past experience, what we talked about, I think we tried to always keep some understanding that taxes would have to be raised in 2.5, but we've always tried to avoid the Act 1 as much as we can. And we do still have more next year. We'll be talking about tax increases for contractual needs, right? So I mean, that's not even in here now. So all I'm saying is I can't tell you where I land, obviously, right now, but I'd say good job. I mean, it's in the ballpark, and however you allocate it, slice it or dice it, and the deficit there is $400,000 with that tax increase.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're gonna come in probably better than that.
Yes.
By a long shot from if you're conservatively budgeting.
Yes.
At least for this year, and so we'll see what happens next year. But anyway, I just want to say, great job to the whole administration. I'm very confident in what you guys are doing. I'm happy to be here and observing it.
Yes, and just to say thank you, and as a team, we've put a lot of time into this, we put a lot of discussion into it, and a lot of thought. I think we parsed every word on this.
I agree 100%.
Everybody's done a great job with this.
Good job.
Thank you. Yoda had a...
So this budget, does it include anything about what we're gonna do with Chancellor Center, if we need to lease space?
No, it does not.
Doesn't, so that would be additional.
We'll talk about, I have other slides about that.
You have another slide. And what about like summer projects and maintenance and things like that?
So if you think about how we've been funding summer projects, we have the money set aside in capital reserve. There's about 3 summers worth of projects set aside. What we traditionally have been doing is, we do budget conservatively and we end up better than we budgeted. We take a percentage of that money and transfer it into capital reserve to pay for future capital summer projects. I personally would like to see that balance maintained around that 18 million 3-year when we can, keep it at that 18 million so that we always have 3 years of summer projects that we can do, should there ever be a time where things get lean, where the budget doesn't come in better than we expected. But not the budget, but the actual doesn't come in better than what we budgeted. So that's, I know there's some issues that, your budget is deficit, but then you end up with all this money, but that money, that funding is needed to cover these summer projects, because the more we are able to keep up with our construction, our smaller projects and keep things going, the less we have to worry about renovating. And the longer we can go between renovating the building.
Ed, you had?
Yeah, real quickly, I love the way you presented it. Those bullet points are as clear as can be. Thank you very much. And the word preparing popped into my head right before you used it. I think it's very smart to include that 1% to increase debt service in anticipation of whatever we need to do about Chancellor, whatever we need to do about a lot of other capital projects. So I think that's very smart to be forward thinking in that respect. And, in terms of that $18 million reserve for summer projects and other capital expenses, I don't think we ever want to get into the situation that we were in when I joined the board 8 years ago, where we had a backlog of maintenance to do, and it was very difficult to catch up. And I don't think we've fully caught up, clearly, but I think we've done a very good job in the past 8 years of catching up, because deferred maintenance is just foolish. So I applaud this, and that 2.63%, considering the Act 1 index, I think is very conservative and reasonable. So thank you.
Are there other questions or comments before?
There's more slides.
Before Tony moves on?
Not yet.
Okay.
Obviously, talking about a tax increase, it's important to consider people who have problems meeting those requirements. I'd like to talk about what I would propose for the 24-25 tax rebate program. In 23-24, we budgeted $250,000. Obviously, we were a little more excited than we should have been, in that so far we've only refunded $24,383. That is 72 refunds. But I would like to expand our version as the state expanded theirs. The PA property tax rebate maximum rebate increased from $650 to $1,000. The additional rebate increased from $325 to $500, and those are for people who make less than $30,000 in income and their property taxes are more than 15% of their total income. So it does include increases in rebates for all qualifying income levels. A resident, so as an example, a resident with $35,000 in income, which was the maximum last year that you would qualify for a rebate, and the state would qualify for a $250 state rebate. The same resident would qualify for a $380 state rebate in 24-25. The maximum income to qualify for the PA rebate increased from $35,000 to $45,000. In 23-24, our rebate was 75% of the total rebate. I would recommend increasing the 24-25 Council Rock rebate to 100% of the total PA rebate. So whatever they get back from the state, we would provide the same amount, provided that they were able to provide us with their application and proof of payment. To give you an example, my mythical person who makes exactly $35,000, in this current year, they would get they got a $250 state rebate, and they would have gotten $187.50 from Council Rock. That would increase to a $380 rebate from the state and a $380 rebate from Council Rock. The Council Rock increase for that person would be $192.50, which is actually more than the proposed tax increase that if they had a home that met was at that middle of the road, assessment. So people in need would actually be taking home more under this budget than they were, than they would have last year, overall.
Can I just make one comment that anyone that's listening, that the income that the state looks at, they only include half of your Social Security income. So if you're getting 35,000 from Social Security, only 17,500 is counted towards this for the rebate.
And I would recommend to anyone that's listening, if you're not sure and you don't have the resources, contact your state representative, contact your local senior center. A lot of those organizations and those state representatives provided the service will provide the service of helping you make sure that if you can get a refund, that you get a refund, or a rebate, I'm sorry.
If I just may add 2 points. One, if the board chooses to go with this tax rebate again this year, Tony and I and our crew will go out publicly to offer information sessions, as we did last year, to places like the Wrightstown Library, the Senior Center. The second point is it's important for people listening that in order to get the Council Rock rebate, you have to have applied for and received the state rebate. And I know there were some questions from some of our community members, and Tony's advice a minute ago was really the right advice, in that if there are questions about the state rebate, contact your state representative's office. And if you have questions about the Council Rock School District tax rebate, and if our board says to move forward with this, we're happy to answer any questions that we have here. We tried to and will continue to spread this far and wide. And to anybody in our community that's listening, if we move forward with this, we would ask them to reach out to folks in the community that may benefit from this, because most of our advertising on this is done electronically. We give flyers and brochures to the local organizations, again, to use the Senior Center as an example. But we want to do everything we could do for outreach with all of our community members who may qualify for this.
Churches.
Thank you.
Another point that I would like to make on this, for people who are listening, last year, the deadline for filing the rebate with the state was expanded to be December 31st, 2023. This year, that has not happened, and the deadline to file your rebate for 2023 is June 30th, 2024. So if you do not have the same time frame this year to apply for your rebate from the state as you did last year. If we implement a Council Rock rebate, I would recommend that we keep the same time frame, which is the entire calendar year. Or not the calendar year, the entire fiscal year.
Joe?
Question. If we approve the budget in June, that's still just for last year, right? This, what we're voting for is gonna be next June. So we have to the end of the year this year for last year.
Yes.
Okay.
For 2023.
Right, okay.
I'm sorry.
I don't know.
Any other questions? Do we have another slide, Tony?
We do. So we're bringing back our radar analogy. We talked about this before. Our 3 biggest areas right now that we need direction from the board: Wrightstown Elementary space, the Chancellor Center, and full-day kindergarten. I'd say if we're talking about initiating a tax increase to pay for full-day kindergarten, we'd like some direction from the board that it's likely to happen. Obviously, Chancellor Center, we've talked about that, knowing what's going on there. And Wrightstown Elementary space and what we're looking at there as far as alleviating that issue. What the board is recommending for those items. So the sooner we can get an answer from the board on those short-term considerations, those are our short-term considerations. I want to combine this with the timeline. So depending on, what you think, so we have to put together now the full budget. Cheryl has really been working hard on that. We got all the payroll numbers in. We have to put together the full budget, and we'll provide you with a budget book and a broken down by building and different curriculum areas, specialist areas, I should say. And then I'd like to see about maybe having another special finance meeting to discuss just the budget again, discuss that budget book.
May 16th.
Well, May 16th is the board meeting. May 9th is the regular finance committee meeting. There's also, I believe we're planning to have a budget forum on May 9th before the finance committee meeting for the public to come in and ask questions about the budget. Then we would ask at the May 16th meeting that you would approve the preliminary budget, which we have to have advertised that it's available for inspection. This is not the final budget. This does not mean that you can't make changes to the budget by the time it's finalized. It just means that we have to have a reasonable budget posted and finalized, and available for the public to view. That still gives you all of that period until June 13th. We'll have another finance committee meeting and school board meeting. I'd ask you to approve the budget at that meeting on June 20th, the final budget. And it needs to be completed by June 30th, 24. But I'd really like to see it approved on the 20th. I think we all would, actually. So, but we do have the extra time.
Bob has a question.
Bob, sorry.
Yeah, more like a comment. I mean, to echo what somebody else said earlier, phenomenal presentation, concise, easy to understand and whatever. However, I do agree, I do think, you presented a lot of information here, so it gives us, and is there any way that we can get these slides?
Yeah.
So that we can look, because I really do think that, it would be nice for us to be able to digest all this and form our opinions, because like you said, at some point in time, we need to get off the pot, so to speak, as to what we want to do, and this isn't the place to do it. At this kind of committee, this meeting, I would like to have another finance meeting where you can solidify some of those numbers, where we can see where this is heading and talk about it, because like you said, we need to give direction as to, for example, if we approve the budget as is now, and unless we're not approving it, and I'm not saying we are, we've committed to all-day kindergarten, whether or not we voted for it or not. And I don't, so we need to find out if we're gonna do that, because, it's not really fair to tax the public on something that we're going to do, or tax them in advance, for example. So I think another meeting would be highly in order, where we can get this down, because unless, of course, we're only going to talk about the budget at our finance meeting, but, one of the reasons that we've gotten this far behind, or we were behind, is because we didn't spend any time on our previous finance meetings talking about the budget. We talked about other things, which is not your fault. That's the fault of the board, where we got talking about other things instead of the budget. We kind of took our eye off the ball there. So I do think that, I would be in favor of having another finance meeting. I don't know, or, a special meeting where we can fit it in. I don't know, but if we can, I'd be in favor. I don't know what the rest of the board would think.
Well, I definitely would like that. I think we definitely would like to hold it before the school board meeting, so that we have, and give you enough time to go through the budget book. And again, you mentioned full-day kindergarten. I think as a function of this budget, we need to, have some sort of decision on that by June 16th, by June 12th, I'm sorry. I think that's really the point where we need clear direction, whether that's however the board chooses to do that, before we ask you to approve the final budget that I think we've done.
Yoda?
Yes. So there was a slide about the Chancellor Center, Wrightstown, and the kindergarten. So you want our support, but we need more information from you in order for us to provide the support. So for example, the Chancellor Center, what are the options, how much are they gonna cost, and what is the time? Wrightstown, okay, there's a space issue. What does that mean? Does it mean that you're asking the board to come up with money to build something else? I mean, what does that mean, really?
Well, I think one of the times, the Wrightstown, there's obviously something needs to be done there. What does this board want to do as a solution? I mean, it's a lot of work to decide, you know, is there, I don't know, is there, would the board prefer a construction solution? What solution would the board want? And there's a lot of work that needs to be done before, like to provide. We need direction as far as what kind of solution you're looking for. To say that, to be able to give you numbers is going to cost money. It's not gonna cost an insignificant amount of money.
But how are we gonna make a decision like that in the dark? If you have to spend some money in order to have your options on the table. So are you telling us maybe that we say you can go ahead and create a plan or like different options of like how, I mean, we cannot the decision out of the thin air. I mean, you have to analyze it. You need to see what the options are and how much it's gonna cost, right?
That's a longer process than just us than what we've done. Like, we've done for most of these items as much as we can do without knowing which direction to head in. I know we talk about full-day kindergarten. There's two decisions that come down to full-day kindergarten, whether or not you want full-day kindergarten, and then another large decision, and part of that is, what do you want to do about bathrooms? We know that they're not required to have special bathrooms in each room, but is that something that the board wants? That's a decent process to figure that out. And again, that's a costly process. So I understand that you want more information, but I don't know how much more information we can provide short of a direction as to which way you want to go. We talked about the Chancellor Center. I will say that fiscally, there are better ways to handle the administration. And my job is to be the fiscal person for this district. I would say fiscally that renovating this building is not the best fiscal decision that you can make for that building. But I also realize, first let me say that I have the fiscal, in administration, all of us have a lot of different, but for me, fiscally, The only thing that supersedes my fiscal responsibility is making sure that the kids have the best education that they can have. I think there's better uses for money and a better solution to fiscally to this building than renovating this building, for administration and renovating this building. But I also realize that there's a value to the building as its location and its history in the district. And that's where I feel like your decision-making kind of needs to be where you want to send us in that. And I can't provide you with every, unless I have a direction, like if you want us to start spending money on bringing somebody in to do the full-fledged, putting a budget together to decide how much you want, how much it's gonna cost, I think that's a decision that the board needs to make to go in that direction. And
I have a lot of more thoughts, but I want to give the opportunity to others to speak and then come back.
So I'm thinking that, you know, we have to focus on getting this budget, and we have time constraints.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of the financial calculations for full-day kindergarten, and so I don't think, you know, that can be just something that we vote on based on the information that we have now. With Chancellor Center, my question is, can administration stay in this building another year? Is that something that we have to do in this budget cycle, or is that something we spend the next year focused on where are we, you know, what can we do, where do we go? And part B of that question is, what do we do if the roof caves in on this building in 2 months? Can we go out? I mean, I'm just saying, if all of a sudden we have to leave this building, okay, for whatever reason, that it's not up to code and we have to leave, would we be in a position, as I know we're looking at leasing property, that process is beginning.
yes.
Would we be able to do that financially, move out? So that the decision of what happens to this building to me, doesn't have to be immediate.
Yeah, the biggest decision I think that needs to be made, if we're talking about increasing taxes for full-day kindergarten, does the board feel that's where we're gonna go? Or does the
Right.
board?
So
Some of the practicalness of what Tony is saying is, you know, we're at a point that we've done an analysis of the facilities. We have talked about and know what it would cost to put a bathroom in Richboro Elementary because it's under construction. To get drawings, to engage an architect, to, if the board decides to put bathrooms in the other schools, if we go with full-day kindergarten, it will cost us money to engage the architect. Educationally, on the education side of it, we're at a point right now where we'll be sending a survey to the community, and we'll be looking to kindergarten teachers to pull them out of classrooms to go visit other full-day kindergarten programs. We will be spending money putting substitute teachers in the room, and then spending money for curriculum development over the summer. And so again, we want to make sure we know the direction that we're going so that we can do those things if that's what we're charged to do. And that's where Tony is suggesting we need some direction. Because educationally, I would not be in support of pulling teachers out from in front of kids to go visit other schools if we're not moving in that direction. So we want to make sure that you know, there's value added there when we're taking teachers out. And for Nicole and Tammy to plan summer work, we talked about full-day kindergarten having to go through a minimum of 2 budget cycles. but we would want to begin that work as it relates to curriculum, the hiring and those things, and that's where Tony's talking about a decision because it in large part comes down to money.
Well, my question really is, in this budget cycle, do we have to consider Chancellor Center or Wrightstown Elementary?
To complete this budget, we do not have to consider those two items.
That really was my question.
However, I will still press upon you that they're both urgent.
Yes. Ed?
Yeah, okay, good. Are there more slides?
No.
Okay, good. That's fine. So, the two things, I understand, we've had a lot of conversation about full-day kindergarten. And I'm wondering if you've completed the necessary financial analysis to give us a reasonable financial estimate for the startup costs and the annual cost for full-day kindergarten so that we can make a decision in May or June about full-day kindergarten.
No, I mean, can I give you a total of the cost? I mean, the bathroom issue is still.
Can you put the bathrooms aside, please?
Okay.
Because I know we have options, but,
Please.
I mean, forget.
I've been waiting, can you let him talk? Because you weren't addressed by I'm just saying, point of order, you weren't addressed. Go ahead.
Point of order?
Yes,
Come on.
I'm waiting.
Not helpful.
I'm still waiting.
Well, so we really don't have
So,
additional numbers.
so we have provided a range of teachers that we need for full-day kindergarten with an associated cost. We have provided a range of specialists, 7, that we have an associated cost. We have talked about having a comfort level of one-time purchases for full-day kindergarten to come out of the Educational Initiative Fund, whether it's tables or cubbies, things of that nature, and even bathrooms that we're putting on the side right now. The part that we don't know is, and it's no different with full-day or half-day kindergarten, what we don't know, and we go all the way back to where we began this conversation, we don't know what our enrollment of kindergarten students will be, and that's why we built the model on the first grade enrollment numbers. And our projection has been an increase of 208 students, and that was predicated on first grade enrollment numbers. So when Tony is pausing, he's pausing because we talk about instructional assistants, cafeteria teachers, psychologists. There are a little bit, those positions are a little bit harder to get our hands and head around because we don't know what that enrollment will be. And even if we did know what the kindergarten enrollment would be, we wouldn't know at this point how many of those students is a psychologist going to have to interact with to test for special education. We do have an idea based on the CRESPA bargaining agreement with some of these other positions with, like, for example, a recess teacher or a cafeteria teacher. So I think that I can speak for the administration and that we are reasonably comfortable with the numbers that we provided you, the cost per teacher, the number of teachers that include specialists, because we heard from the board that we want to offer the same specials if we do full day kindergarten that we do in grades 1 through 6. So those numbers are relatively solid. The part that we are unsure of are things like I just said to you, and then we're confident about the one-time expenditures coming out of that Educational Initiative Fund, in addition to what we spoke with you tonight about. And to Mr. Hickey's point earlier, we don't want to talk about an increase in taxes if it's something we're not moving forward with. because we want to be able to say to our community, here's what you're buying with that tax increase, whether it's the 0.57 this year and the 0.57 next year, so that we're really telling people what they're getting for their money. So I hope, Tony, I didn't mean to step in on you, but I hope that answered Mr. Kate's question.
Oh, you're not finished?
No. I think that's great. That sounds good. And I just would love to see those numbers aggregated again, you know, on a single slide or two, so that if you want a decision from us about going forward to full-day kindergarten, just remind us what those numbers look like, so that when we're making that decision, we have those numbers clearly in front of us, that's all. And my other point, and as to Chancellor Center, we've talked about this, the idea that Chancellor Center and Richboro Middle School and Twining Ford and all these decisions are intertwined, and I suspect, I can't speak for all 8 board colleagues, but I suspect the board would support if the administration felt that assistance from a consultant in this area would be helpful. I think the board would give you the resources to hire a consultant to assist with this master capital planning process. We've talked about that, because we've put a whole lot on your plates, and I'm proposing that you know, you consider asking for a consultant.
You will see that on the upcoming facility slides. We will talk to the board about the choices in front of us, whether it is going with Dewey, who's recently been bought out, or going out to RFP. And there's a cost-benefit analysis that we'll share for your consideration, but that is, that will be coming up at the next facilities meeting.
Thank you.
Joe?
I would like Ms. Polly to go before me if she wants to speak. Because I know you had some questions, but if you're okay, I'll go.
No, I just, at that point, because we kept talking about the bathrooms, and we know that the bathrooms are not required, and we probably gonna be easy to figure out the cost of that. But I think, as Ed said, if we can have a layout, a slide that says, this is what we anticipate to be the cost. And because I know we have different discussions, but we have not really put together all this. And I've heard different things. I mean, one thing I've heard from the facilities perspective, that we probably have the space. So that's very important, if we don't have to build something. So a summary of what we have so far, I think that would be ideal.
If I could respond to that, the reason I keep bringing up bathrooms is because if we're going to spend money on full-day kindergarten, that is going to be our biggest cost, outside of everything else. And it's going to be, the cost is going to be widely different if you want to do that, depending on the school. Some schools, it's, depends on, if there's a basement, if there's a flooring underneath. Some it's gonna depend on if there isn't, and there still has no flooring. So that is probably the most unknown portion of the full-day kindergarten puzzle, and the most expensive to get an answer to for the administration. So that's why, I just want to say that's why I have a lot of concern over the decision on bathrooms related to full-day kindergarten.
But there are options, right?
Yeah, thank you so
Joe.
much. Yeah, so I'm gonna try to make it a little simple on everybody, because we have 9 weeks to do a budget. We're gonna get this budget done. Your proposals are not unreasonable to me. And I said, you can earmark it, slice it, dice it, however you want. I mean, you're putting a 1% increase in there for future, revenue. Debt service, which is absolutely needed from my standpoint as a financial advisor, looking at North. Just look at North. And the substantial obligation that that's gonna be to renovate, and you look at the debt service, what we're gonna have coming available, you're not gonna be able to do all those schools and everything else without, there's also an idea that I have, and I'm gonna jump, related to this. You can't just stay at $18 million. If it was 10 years ago at 18 million, 20 years from now, that purchasing power is a quarter of what it was when we started at 18 million. So, I'm not into getting into that now, but obviously that's just the way the dollar is inflating or devaluing. So, and again, I understand Ms. Polly's kind of frustration if we're coming here and all of a sudden we have the numbers, you gave the numbers for what is known, and you put it into the budget. And there are these huge things that I've spoke to other people, because I've always been a proponent of for kindergarten. They said, you know how much money it's gonna cost to put the bathrooms in each school? And then you have to decide to yourself, even if they change the laws and you don't need a bathroom there, if you want the kindergartners walking down the halls, and who's gonna be watching these little kids, some of them not as mature as others, and that is a concern that obviously we're not gonna hammer out in my opinion, in the next 5 weeks, next 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And I think your proposal was we would start full-day kindergarten this fall?
No.
Okay, the following fall. And so the deadlines for when would you need to have that decision before we started to do that? I don't think it's gonna be June, but we'd have to move rather quickly through it. If the money's there, we still, like even if you do the 0.5 increase for 2 years to pay for the professional staff, where are we paying for the additional unknowns? Which we know, if you talk to Doug, and he could just give you a ballpark without doing all the plans, it's gonna be millions of dollars, but you could get some ideas that you could judge your decisions off of. So as far as this, I definitely wanna go to RFP for the plan. I wouldn't wanna just pick somebody that we're doing. Me personally want to see, what other firms can provide and what they've done in other school districts. And of course, it makes it competitive from a cost standpoint. And of course, Dewey might come in, because they're Dewey, they may come in lower than everybody, but I wouldn't want to just pick that firm without going up to RFP. So I think for me, and I think Ed's been here when we talked about 2%, steady as she goes, and not go. I'm very happy we can do all these things without going crazy and going over 3.5. And if we end up earmarking kindergarten, it's a hopeful thing. But if we don't use that 0.5 for that, even if we end up with a surplus, we're going to need that money in the future. I really do believe, even if it's less we increase next year for contractual obligations that we hopefully can negotiate, which is the biggest chunk of our budget. They always seem to have the numbers working really good. It's only 1%. I feel. So anyway, I don't think we're gonna make these decisions on that bomb chart, so to speak. Bombs away chart.
Radar.
Oh, okay, well, see, I'm a World War II fan, so.
Bob, did you have something?
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably aren't gonna wanna hear this, but I think what we did was we handcuffed ourselves by giving ourselves somewhat of an arbitrary date of when we need to implement this full-day kindergarten. And if you just look next door to Central Bucks, they tried to do this, and they're not even implementing their full-day kindergarten now until 26, 27. Now, yes, granted, they're doing a lot of other things, but we tried to compress this in a period of basically 3 months of what we're gonna do. And I think a lot of other initiatives and some of the things that maybe we should have been doing over the last 2 months suffered as a result of us talking constantly about full-day kindergarten, as opposed to possibly, extending this conversation out past the budget when the budget was done, and looking at all these other initiatives now that we now have, and talking about these things in July, August, September. I mean, we haven't even talked about like redistricting. We haven't talked about a parent survey or anything like that. I don't see how this ever gets done in the space of 2 months. Whereas like this is stuff that possibly we should have planned for, like, giving ourselves a better timeline of when we wanted to implement this. you can get a feel of how everybody wants to proceed on it. And I'm sure a lot of people are gonna say, you know, now we're just delay, but, you know, in the interim, from what I'm looking at tonight, what I see on the board, what I'm hearing from people is, you know, we need a lot of help for our kids that are here. I know kindergartners are our kids and the future students, but we have a lot of kids here who need us now and need us to make these decisions. And if I look at the 5% that I'm gonna pay on kindergarten, but 5% gets me a supervisor of curriculum, 2 ELD specialists, a STEAM teacher, and a math specialist, that's where I would rather go. And, you know, to try to maybe, like I said, I think we handcuffed ourselves by trying to rush all this through, and I still think that, I'm not saying stop the process, but maybe, you know, we don't have to rush the process, knowing that this is a decision that's gonna be in effect forever. I mean, like, when I talked about how it's gonna cost $30 to $40 million to fund this just for teachers. Yeah, because it's an investment. We're making a 30-year investment in our school, and I don't know if, you know, we justified it by trying to rush it all through in a space of 3 months. And I apologize for the board for some of the things, well, for me anyway, I apologize to you, Tony, and everyone else of all the work that we've made you do, because I see the requests that we ask of you and the stuff that we did. And I know this is what you get paid for, but like I said, you know, you have time that you need to do other things as well.
Tracy?
Sorry, it's a 0.5% increase, not a 5% increase, just for anybody that's listening at home. That's a very different thing, so I want to be clear. Okay, just a couple things to address with the administration. Thank you very much for this presentation. It was really good and really helpful for me, at least as a new board member, to really dig into these numbers, and it was very well presented. Thank you. Question about full-day kindergartens. I think this is the information that I would need to make a decision. Bathrooms decision to me, I know we try to have everything be the same at every single school, but this might be it's very different to me if my kindergartner is going outside of his or her classroom to a bathroom across the hall that is used by kindergarten and first grade versus going all the way down and sharing a bathroom with sixth graders. So if you say to me that at, you know, Richboro Elementary, the classroom, the kindergartner is going to go outside of their room and right across the hall to the bathroom, I say, okay, that's fine. But if you're saying that at Churchville, they have to go, there's only one bathroom for all the kids in the school, and, you know, they're going to have to go down the hall by themselves, you know, then that's a different answer. So I have no idea about the bathrooms. I don't know where these kids are going to have to be going to go to the bathroom, so I can't make a decision about whether or not I want to put in new bathrooms when I don't know what the situation is with the current bathrooms. I still don't, I am understanding that we have the space for kindergarten at all of the schools, but we haven't, we've asked, I think, about how that's going to look at, as particularly Wrightstown, but several of the schools, and we don't have answers about that yet. I think you alluded to maybe May, Mrs. Crawford, being ready for that. So, yeah, I think I'm with everybody else that I feel like we can't make that decision yet. And then the question about, on the radar chart about Wrightstown, I think we need to know, you know, what is the growth, what is the population of students that attend that school? What does that look like? What is the population of babies in that school? Like, what is it going to look like in 5 years, right? When kids are coming into Wrightstown, I would like to see like a chart of like, okay, you know, this is the population in that area. This is how many kids are attending Wrightstown that, you know, before the last redistricting would have attended Richboro, and maybe there's space for them now with the Richboro addition, you know, I feel like there's a lot of moving pieces here, and I need to see it much more detailed in order to make any kind of decisions about those two areas. And then Chancellor Center, you know, I'm nowhere near ready to make a decision, so I apologize about that. But, you know, this building is really special, and I would hate to lose it, but I understand that, you know, we have to be fiscally responsible, so that's my.
I have one quick question. If the bathroom, does the bathroom circumstance have to be the same at every school?
There is no PDE requirement that mandates a bathroom for kindergarten students.
So if one.
So the answer is no.
So if one school was able to share a bathroom with the adjacent kindergarten, we wouldn't have to put in a new bathroom there, but we could, if we needed to, at a different school. So we could make those decisions.
There
Okay.
are no PDE requirements. To Mrs. Oseki's question about proximity to the classroom, our schools are broken up for youth use with the primary bathrooms. So we would not have a kindergarten student using the same restroom as a sixth grade student. Typically, those of you that have been in schools will know, particularly at the primary grades, there are built-in bathroom breaks where the recess teacher will have all the students use the restroom at the same time, wash their hands, get a drink during different times of the day. And that includes kindergarten, and our kindergarten classrooms currently, you know, have bathrooms. So those, to Ms. Oseki, to your point about the proximity, that's something that teachers do every day. It's just a normal routine. Kids travel with, you know, other students. They travel with partners. They travel with an adult to get to the restroom, you know, proximity to the restroom. So in terms of what we must do for PDE, there is no must do with regard to bathrooms for kindergarten students.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, that's the answer then. I mean, you know, Joe's saying that he might not be ready to make a decision on bathrooms, but, you know, that pretty much answers my question. I don't want bathrooms to hold us up if they are available and built-in bathroom breaks, and, you know, we have protocols and safety measures in place, you know, then I would say, you know, let's proceed without the bathroom.
So does anyone else have any questions? Mike?
Thank you. This board was presented at a previous education committee meeting with a slide that demonstrated an estimate, I think, of 17, at first it was 16, and then it went up to 17 additional classrooms across the district, where you're looking at roughly 1 to 3 per school. I asked a question then, and I understand the answer may not have been clear, but how many of those are devoted to, or could be devoted to, full-day kindergarten, or how many of them are reserved for other 1 through 6 grades? And if we needed 17 additional, we've got approximately 10 coming online at Richboro and approximately 5 coming online at South Finestone, but that was based upon demographic insight as far as the growth of these populations and where they were coming from, a demographer that had a contract with 3 years to look at and track the delta of what was going to happen with these. So I suppose the question still remains, is our structure in full-day kindergarten recognizing that we still need 17 classrooms, or is the 15 that were coming online acceptable? What do you do with the 2 that weren't? So that's one side of it. And then, yeah, you're right. If you add bathrooms, it gets more expensive. To relate it to a residential project, the kitchens and the bathrooms are some of the most expensive square footage in a house. So it makes sense to a large degree that bathrooms are going to be expensive real estate in a school. So that's an important question regarding that planning. The next question with respect to bathrooms is the plan theoretically to renovate the interior so that theoretically, not to hold the conversation up, but if that was going to be the plan, do you renovate the interior to add bathrooms where needed, which removes square footage from class space, right? Or do you add it on the outside? And then do you do that in connection with adding classrooms? These are some logistical elements that I think have been floating around for a while that would be helpful to understand. Some of the soft costs to add these teachers of what we're looking at, and having a tax increase phased theoretically over some time period. But those teachers don't leave after 2 years. So their salaries still need to be supported moving forward. Is it the position that these two phase tax increases are going to raise enough money to pay these salaries for these teachers, the support staff, and all of that for, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 years of the expected, experience within Council Rock? And if it is, okay. If it's not, what do you do for the remaining period? So we're looking right now at about over 70% of this district's, correct me if I'm wrong, but about 70%, a little over, of this district's revenue going towards salary and benefits. So this would increase that, and these are some things to look at. Finally, my last point on this is if we're making a decision, and a few meetings ago, I believe I predicted that this would occur sometime after school, sometime over the summer, and so it's not a surprise that that's coming through, just based upon the timeline and based upon the analytics. But we're making a decision to make an investment in the education of this school district. I think at one point there was discussion of if we do this, then you can't do that chart. And that would be interesting to analyze. And I think to make things easier for decision-making practices, if you look at a cost, if you look at a disruption, if you look at a ramp up or phase in time, whatever you want to look at it, and then you look at the benefit, that makes it easier for board members to make decisions about things. So is kindergarten maybe the best place to spend X amount of $1 million for the education of this district? But there's also 1 through 6, and then 7 through 12. So are there other areas that might be more beneficial with respect to less disruption, with respect to faster implementation time, with respect to a lower cost, and with respect to a higher educational value? I don't know. So that's, this board, both during my time and prior, has discussed some of these other educational initiatives. So that would be helpful, I think, to the community. But the most important thing for right now moving forward, and other board members have said this, is to get a survey out to the community and find out where the community is with respect to enrollment, right? With respect to interest, with respect to some other comments. This district has sent out surveys to the community for a variety of different issues, and I can't think of something more significant, both from an educational value as well as a financial cost, than to send out a survey for full-day kindergarten. In addition to that, I think it would be interesting to survey some of the businesses, have a conversation with champions. And this administration is filled with a lot of smart people that have got a lot of experience. So by no means am I indicating that some of this has not occurred in one way, shape, or form or another. But to consolidate it and bring it to this board, I think would be helpful to evaluate where this board can make a decision on the best return of our investment to help keeping this district moving toward educational excellence and making the best determination. To Mr. Hickey's point, I don't know if that's tacking on another thing or making it difficult to put a decision in 9 months. But we've been talking about full-day kindergarten with respect to finance, with respect to education, with respect to facilities. And looking at a decision in the next 9 months, to Mr. Tate's point, having that one sheet slide that kind of totals everything up would be helpful, but it would also be interesting to recognize with the consideration of how much a high school could cost in the future, and looking at Doug Taylor's plan that he's developed of a 20-year rolling cycle of rolling through and renovating our schools and the other schools that are online, and that we only have an $18 million borrowing capacity at the moment. To paint ourselves into a corner, regardless of the decision, would be a mistake. We're dealing with a very fine margin, and this board is being asked to make a decision on what is the best way to go at this point. And so some of these would be helpful. Thank you.
I'm sorry. If I could just, thanks, Ms. Stone, to respond to two of your points. One, what you shared about bathrooms and internal, external square footage. That's exactly what Tony was talking about, with costing money for us to find that out by engaging somebody to do drawings. The second point is, I want to make sure we're clear on the 17 classrooms. We're not suggesting that 17 rooms need to be built. We're suggesting that based on the first grade projections that we used to look at what enrollment might be, showing us an increase of 208 students, that we would need 17 rooms that are already in existence in this district, put them to use as a full-day kindergarten classroom. And Nicole, do you have anything to add to that? With regard to those, we're not suggesting for 1 second that we're building 17 rooms, but rooms that are now dedicated for something else, they would be dedicated to full-day kindergarten based on those projections.
The example I gave a couple meetings ago, take Champions, just because you just referenced them. At Goodnow Elementary School, we have 2 full-size classrooms dedicated to our Champions program. They're used all day for that purpose. In the event that we had full-day kindergarten, then the 2 classrooms that we would need additionally, in order to bring full-day kindergarten to Goodnow Elementary School, we would be able to capture those 2 classrooms because we would no longer need Champions to reside there all day. That's just one example. There are many others where, working with principals, we've been able to identify different rooms in each building.
Yeah, which I think dovetails back on some comment discussion that's been floating around this district for a couple of years, that there's unused classrooms. We're not by any way saying that there's unused classrooms that we can just bring online. We're talking about shifting some of this, and with the example of Champions, it makes a lot of sense. But it would be interesting to hear some of these other examples of, could it be a STEAM room, a dedicated STEAM room? I don't know. Would that be, or is it a classroom that is currently being used for special education that now, so there's push and pull. If there aren't any open classrooms, but we're still finding, all of this, it would be interesting to, just on the surface and the numbers, it looks like it's short. But, and so where the educational polls are coming from for this dedication.
And each school and each program is unique unto itself. So Nicole gave the example of the Champions program. Another example, in our schools, we have related services, OT, PT, speech, and some regular full-size classrooms are dedicated to, for example, related services, sharing regular-sized, full-size, 745, 800 square foot classroom. Those 2 or 3 teachers, OT, PT, speech, or whatever they may be, we would have to find another spot for them and then use that full-size classroom for a full-day kindergarten. So again, if Nicole gave a good example at Goodnow, we would have to go through and tell you in detail each school where the principals and Nicole and Jess and Tony have identified ways to reshuffle some things so that we're not looking to build classrooms, we're looking to reallocate space based on how it's used right now.
And that's wonderful. I think this administration, like I mentioned before, a lot of smart people looking at stuff and trying to analyze that to avoid the conversation of, yeah, we need to build 17 extra classrooms. It makes it attainable to do this. But the question, I think, just looking around and listening to conversations, is what's the educational impact of making those moves? It's a lot of information. This is a big thing, which is why this district has been wrestling with this for a long time. We find ourselves in a position where we might be able to do it, and I ask, that's great, get me to yes, but convince me that this is the best educational thing that we can do for our kids. Are there others? And look at it from a cost-benefit analysis, like you would do with an investment. All of this is a huge lift.
Can I
It's a
just,
massive lift.
can I just make two suggestions? And one is, we already have all this data. Nicole put together all the information, and so did Tony from the Financial Point. Can we just pull those together and take out any excess, because it may have been part of something else? If we can put those together and then send that all to each of the board members, so we have all of that data to review again. And then that'll help us work through some of these decisions. And now I don't remember what my other comment was.
Well, we may have this data, but I don't know if this body has seen it all. And I certainly know that we haven't seen it all in one place. There were
That's
several.
why I'm suggesting that we put it all together.
Right, there were several questions that I just asked in that little bit of time here that I don't recall seeing before. So I don't think anybody disagrees that it would be helpful to have all the information together, but I don't necessarily know that we have all the information. We might have a lot.
We have, well, let's see.
Right.
And then we can move from there. And with that, are there any other comments? Do we have some public comments? Did you want to make any comments?
Let's come to questions. I'm here for questions.
Questions?
I'm a simple guy.
But we
Somebody has
gave,
simple questions.
we gave all the answers we have.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was an awful lot of answers. Let me say that, address the elephant in the room. How do you eat an elephant? One piece at a time. What you're doing, you're trying to tackle everything all at once. The way I look at it, I'm looking at it simple. What's the most important thing? Put that down. What's the most important thing? Kindergarten's important, but what's the most important thing? Maybe you vote amongst yourself. If you were to put something on a piece of paper. Yeah, we like the idea of this, STEM, or we like that, or whatever. What's the most important thing? The last thing I would look at would be the chancellor's thing. Now, my question is this too. Is it really reasonable? Is it that bad? How much would it cost? I'm sure you figured this all out. This is a beautiful building. And what's it gonna, a piece of property. You're probably making lots of money. It's gonna cost you lots of money to build it somewhere else or lease it. So look at that priority. Have someone come here and look at it. What is really there? Does it need plumbing? Does it need a whole new internet trunk? Is there mold downstairs? I've worked in buildings. I worked in Packers building downtown. Mold, this and that. They got rid of all that. They sprayed it all out there. They covered up the walls. I mean, there's people going in and out of there. So if you're worried about it, especially that basement, that's pretty scary out there. There's things you can do to make this building livable and function. Now, if there's something that's really like, I don't know how much you put in this already in renovation. So you got to look at it that way. Did you put $100,000 in this thing already? They're just going to throw that away? It's like back when the stock market all went down, and all of a sudden you sold it and then it went back up. So you don't know. Now, my final question is this, and it's a simple math question. I'll ask Joe because he's the guy that has the money guy. What would it cost me if I had $1 million house? Not that I have $1 million house, but if I had $1 million house, what's it going to cost me? Worst case scenario, in the next 2 years in taxes, what's my taxes going to be? Increase. Simple question.
The mills that are up.
Okay, so I'm not good.
Oh, your million, okay, so let's see, if it's one
The average-
75 for.
No, I don't care average.
The average, well, I'm gonna say it's around $600-700.
700, because look, there's a lot of $1 million houses being built, so that $1 million house is gonna come up with $600.
For the 1 year.
Yeah, for just 1 year.
Yeah.
How about
Tony,
2
put up
years?
the slide.
How about
Do you have
that?
a slide?
And that's another thing, if you have these slides here, and everybody's asking about slides, it's, I don't know, I'm not a tech guy, but I figured, if you have these slides, can you get these slides, make copies of them, not Xerox, whatever they do now, they make copies of it, and each one gets a copy, so they have it in their hands, versus like trying to
30
remember.
seconds.
We're doing that again? Never mind, we're done, you got my answer, thank you, see you.
Thank you.
That was a little high.
What's that?
For the public records, more like $500.
Thank you.
Thank God.
I want to thank everybody for putting all this time, it's an awful lot of time you guys put in.
It's interesting.
Great. And the most organized guy in here is this gentleman over here. If I had a project, I'd put you in charge because you've got organization skills.
Which guy, Bobby? I just want to make it clear that, all presentations at these meetings are posted on the website under the finance department. Thank you.
Thank you.
I like the little disclaimer on the bottom.
So, can we adjourn our meeting?
I second. That's what I heard.